everybody, and welcome to Fire and Pod, a podcast where we recap all things House of the Dragon. I am your host, Katie. I am here on behalf of Silent Podcast, where we are anything but silent, and have some maybe unfamiliar faces to you if you typically tune in live or listen to us on a weekly basis. Chanel and Javier both are unable to make it this week. Feel better soon, Chanel, and Javier is unfortunately has a work conflict, but if you have listened to our Star Wars coverage on the High Ground, you may know both of these lovely co-hosts who are joining me today. I'm here with Naomi and Matt, who is a frequent guest on our High Ground podcast. Naomi is my counterpart co-host for the High Ground. Naomi, how are you today?
I'm good. Am I your dyad, or what was the Star Wars? You know how they were like in the, I don't know. That's a question for another time. I'm great.
I'm in Game of Thrones brain. So I'm
Okay.
like, let me switch for a second.
Sure. I'm like, we're just named after each other. We're just different generations
Yeah.
of like another Aegon. No, I'm great, Katie.
Yes.
I'm happy to be here with both of you guys. I love House of the Dragon so far, and I love Game of Thrones when it was good. So what a treat to be here when it's actually good again.
Right. I know. It's so good again. Matt, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good. No problem. Am I a frequent guest of the other podcast?
Been on, what,
Two?
3 times?
No,
2
I
to
think
3
twice,
times?
right? Twice.
Our
Well,
most frequent guest that we
There are only
had.
6 episodes, so that's
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
true, so that's
so that's pretty frequent.
almost 50%. Yeah. I'm excited to be here. I'm a fan of Game of Thrones. I only read the first 2 books, and I didn't read anything for this. For what's the book called? It's called
Fire and Blood.
Fire and Blood, right?
Hot D.
Well,
D.
yeah.
That's a different book.
Right. So I know of it. I'm trying to stay as unspoiled as possible, which has been difficult because I have theories, but I've been really enjoying. It's been getting better and better. Like every time an episode comes out, I'm like, I don't want to watch this just because I feel like I have some PTSD about Game of Thrones that like I just don't like. I feel like I don't want to watch, but then it gets better every episode. So I'm excited.
It gets better, kids.
It really does. It really does. Naomi, how are you feeling about this season so far? I know you kind of said Game of Thrones is good again. Is that your official stance?
I mean, Matt took the words right out of my mouth. Like, I am trying not to spoil myself because I'm so interested in how the story is going. I feel like this is a great example. I think, Katie, you and I know for sure, like, Star Wars loves to do a prequel, and you're like, why did we do this? This added nothing to the story. This is adding so much to the story, and it's a prequel.
So much.
To the point where I don't even really think of it as a prequel. I just think of it as like a separate occurrence in the society that they live in. Anyways, I really appreciate that we are getting to see a different side of what Game of Thrones can offer, because I find that things like who's going to be king and like who gets to sit on the Iron Throne are actually some of the most boring parts of Game of Thrones. That's my hot take.
I actually find those parts to be the most interesting part of Game of Thrones. I feel like, and not to just completely disagree with you, but I'm about to. I like the battles are cool, but like, you know, the White Walkers kind of flopped. They went nowhere. You know, the journey to the Faceless Men was a flop. Like there's a lot of things that were like kind of floppy, but I felt like the interpersonal relationships and just the dynamics between the houses was some of the most meaty, interesting stuff. And I feel like it's probably because it was all George R.R. Martin's doing and not like the shitty D&D writers from who like filled in some of the other stuff. And it feels like because George R.R. Martin is so heavily involved in this, it's why it's so rich and good.
I think the strength of that show was its pacing and character development. Right, that was like basically the entire show. It was just like, this is slow, but like it really lets you get into the characters. So, I mean, they're doing the same thing here. So it's nice. I mean, we're doing some skipping, so it's not as slow. Well, a lot of skipping, but it does feel like there's a lot of character development because we're just focusing on the same group as opposed to, with more children. But, you know what I mean?
Yes, always more children. Every episode we have more children.
And let me specify, Katie, because I do agree with you, like the parts of it where it's like the battles, the prince that was promised, like the prophecies, the whatever, the sort of side of Game of Thrones where it's just about who wins, I think is more what I mean. That drives me nuts. The like, Dany deserves to be queen. I just rewatched Game of Thrones season 1, episode 7 recently, and I was like, I don't care if she gets to be, you watch it back and you're like, who cares about her? She's in the East. Nobody can give it up. you don't own this. And maybe that's the best part of Game of Thrones, is it reminds us that like, what is a monarchy but like a really exaggerated bullshit.
Totally agree. We had another time jump this episode. I'm not going to get into that just yet, other than just like the full episode yet. But what are you guys feeling with the time jumps in general? What do you guys think the pacing? How do you feel about the pacing? Do you feel like you're missing any character development? How do you feel about these new actors with these kids?
I initially didn't like the time jumps because it was just too sudden, and there's just so many new faces you have to get used to. But especially when we went to new like Alicent and Rhaenyra, like I was dreading that because you fall in love with the actors, and like I really enjoyed the initial, I forget the actual actors' names, but the young Alicent and Rhaenyra, I thought they were so good, and I was really hesitant to move to the adult ones. And lo and behold, they're amazing, both of them. So I really like them. The kids too. I mean, the new kids from this episode specifically, I thought they all did a really good job. For not Aemond. It is Aemond. The actor for Aemond, they must have brought a lineup of like 1,000 people, and they just found the bitchiest face for him. And they're like, I want this guy. The guy who's like, oh my God, I can't believe that dude has
the sharpest
a real face.
Chin.
I know. It's like unbelievable.
Quite a sharp chin.
But yeah, I'm liking it.
Honestly, I'm just really gonna miss the little kid who played, I think Luke is the second born child, because in all the BTS videos, he's like always flossing or doing some little dance, and it is so funny to see.
BTS, the boy band?
No, like the behind the scenes video.
I totally thought it was the boy band. All right, cool.
The boy band has ruined behind the scenes content for movies and television. No, and all like behind the sscenes videos, he's like flossing or like dabbing, and so it's very funny.
Hilarious.
I'm gonna miss him a lot.
Great.
I gotta look that up.
But I think that the time jumps, I've sort of said before, I think that the people who suffer the time jumps the most are the people who only get one episode in their character.
Yep.
For example, I think a lot of the Valerians who age up in like one episode increments, because we saw it again where I think it's Bela and Reina are both like played by new actresses, and so they don't have they have even less time to essentially get their performance across and like integrate themselves into the community, into the like storylines as like a fully fleshed out character. And what I think is a sort of where the show is falling a little bit short for me is that this is a show that's supposed to be about like, the consequences of your parents affect you, and then you affect your children, right? It is always about parents affecting their children. And I think we're losing some closeness to the kids, where we're seeing how the parents affect Rhaenyra and Alicent, but we're not seeing how in as much detail. We are seeing it, but we're not seeing it in the sort of really, really interesting levels that we had seen it in the previous generation. So I wish and I hope that there's more of that in the episodes to come. But that's my one complaint, is that like sometimes these kids just age up so fast. I'm like, I don't know who the hell that is. It's an adult now. I got it. Never mind. I can't learn any of their names.
No, same. I think I have most of their names down now, I think. But yeah, I felt the same way last week, and we've kind of had that conversation too here with Javier and Chanel. It just feels like we're missing a lot of the character development for these characters that we're supposed to care about. So it just becomes like harder to care about them when you don't, like, every week it's just a different actor. Like you said, like no one knows their names really. We're not like digging in too much, and I feel like that is a symptom of the time jumps, just because like we're just not able to spend as much time developing them as we were able to with Rhaenyra and Alicent and the others, which sure, they're the main characters, but like I have to assume eventually some of these kids are going to become the main characters. I mean, I don't know, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I still find myself more attached to the the main people, like the Hand, Alicent, Rhaenyra, Viserys, like the people from the first. The characters from the first episode, like those are the people I find myself obviously the most attached to. But.
Yeah.
People are like, Patty Constantine for an Emmy, like Viserys. And I'm just like, I think it's just because you've seen him the most. Like, because him and Matt Smith are like never changing, they have the ability to really deliver a performance across 7 or 8 episodes. And like, you get really close to them, whereas you're so unfamiliar. But I also have to say that like, I think the performance that everybody is ignoring, not to jump to, is Rhaenys. I think that The actor.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Princess Rhaenys is really, really good. And everyone's saying, give Matt Smith an Emmy. Matt Smith hasn't done shit this episode. He doesn't deserve an Emmy. Stop saying that. Rhaenys is so good. She's really talented and giving a great performance. And I thought this was like really her episode to shine as well.
Yeah, she's been great in every episode.
Yeah, she's really been great. This is a Viserys Stan podcast, just so you guys know. I mean, week over week, since I think like week 2 or 3, we were like early on the Viserys Stan train because specifically, I think Javier and myself, I know Chanel is also, she enjoys Viserys, but I know Javier and myself have been very firm on like what a great performance Paddy Considine is giving, especially when he is playing off of Rhaenyra. We thought that specifically about Millie Alcock, but also when he's playing against Emma Darcy, he's amazing. So you know what? I'm giving Paddy Considine his flowers. We're going to talk about him, I think, a little bit
flowers.
later. I have a few notes. Yeah, I mean, everybody's on the bandwagon now about like he needs an Emmy, but we've been saying it since at least episode 2, if not 3.
You were the first. You were the first ever. Okay.
Listen, we loved him from the beginning. We've been standing. We put him really high on our tier list last week, even though he was like basically half dead. So, I mean, we love him. Let's get into the episode. I have a lot to say about Viserys when we get to the end, but I'll save it. We'll give him his proper eulogy.
Spoilers.
So, well, hopefully you're not listening to this podcast if you haven't watched the episode or if you're spoiler averse. But we keep it to show spoilers only. We don't talk about book spoilers. None of us are too far ahead. So we open an episode. We're in Driftmark, and there are more issues at the Stepstones, which like I've never heard of the Stepstones before, so I have to assume they just like go away or something. But like I just can't believe how many issues we're having at this.
What's going on here
throughout this episode? Yeah, like what is going on?
What's so cool about the Stepstones? I mean, we saw it.
I feel like the Stepstones are like the Florida Keys. Like all of a sudden, like Florida's popping off and being annoying, and like you have to be like, God damn it! Like, why is Florida crazy right now?
Yeah.
Florida man, Stepstone man. Yeah,
that's the
Florida
crab
man.
feeder.
It's a crab
feeder is
ties people
Florida
to post
man
and feeds them to crabs.
Yeah, Stepstone man. Oh man.
Well, we find out that Corlys is back fighting there and gets gravely injured and has a fever now from his injury, probably an infection. Rhaenys hasn't seen him in years. She's sitting the throne in Driftmark. Bela is there as her ward. This is kind of crazy. What's going on here? Vaemond comes in, though, and he's like pissed. He's basically thinking Corlys is already dead or acting as if he's dead already, even though he's not. Kind of weird, like, wouldn't they ship him back to Driftmark to be with the Maesters there and make sure that he gets good care? Like, wouldn't you think that if he's that sick and wounded, they would try and transport him back?
I think he's on the way there. No? Isn't he like being transported there?
Maybe.
That's what I thought.
Oh,
but it like takes like a really long time.
Yeah, that's what I garnered, but also I feel like part of it was like, look, he's not doing well and we're working on it, but like we're not miracle workers here. We're just Maesters who are kind of idiots.
Right.
As the Maesters are. I also think that Driftmark is one of my favorite I don't know how you guys feel, but Driftmark is one of my favorite like new locations that they have created in this show. Stepstones, whatever. But Driftmark is like, this is a cool ass castle.
Yeah.
And I will be really sad if Corlys dies. I feel like underreported part of the storyline is like Corlys could kick the wooden bucket at any moment,
Totally. And we are also a Corlys Stan podcast as well. We put him at the top of our power ranking last week in our tier list, with Viserys second to him. And I will be very upset if this is the end of Corlys. He's been a great character. We've been loving his relationship with Rhaenys on this podcast. He seems like a noble guy. But I mean, Vaemond says here, he wants to talk about the succession, and he says, my brother only cares about history books, which we kind of talked about a little bit last week too, is that it's not so much about like doing the right thing. It's about his legacy, which his brother seems more along the lines of like, I don't want my house to just disappear with these bastards. And he's not afraid to say what everybody's thinking, whether or not he should be saying it.
Well, he should be.
Which he should be saying it?
He should be afraid.
Oh, yes. No. He should be afraid. But you can't just go around saying these things.
Yeah. I mean, part of what what is pointed out last week is that, at the end of the day, these kids still have the Valerian last name.
Yep.
People aren't going to remember what they looked like. There's no cameras right now. Nobody's going to know what they looked like in, 1,000 years or whatever. I don't know. The normal years in Game of Thrones time. They're not going to remember them. They're just going to know that they were the Valerians. And that's all that matters. And I think that what I like about Vaemond is this is again the sort of symbolism of like the second brother, right? Although is Vaemond older? Do we remember?
I think he's the second brother.
I think so too. And I think that he's the younger brother, and he's kind of doing what Daemon did, which is like he's going to just mouth off and speak up. And unfortunately, he does not have such powerful brothers in high places that can keep him from getting his tongue cut out of his head, you know? Yep. It's just simply not as I don't know. Should have kept your mouth shut, my guy. That's all, you know.
Totally. So definitely a bad move. Definitely a bad move. Bela is there. So Bela is Laena and Daemon's daughter, and she's the ward to Rhaenys, and she sends word through letter, I guess, however, to Daemon, who's on Dragonstone with Rhaenyra. It's been 6 years. They haven't been back to King's Landing since they left. He's harvesting dragon eggs. Rhaenyra's dragon laid 3 eggs. And he gets the letter, and she's basically like, hey, Dad, so this is going down. Vaemon's going to the King's Landing. He's going to call in Lucerys's succession into a petition, and he's also going to question his bloodline. Like, you probably should go. So they're like, oh, guess we got to go to King's Landing. And they leave, and they go to King's Landing. There is an open question from Rhaenyra about where Rhaenys stands in this. Like, is she supportive of this? Would she support us? Rhaenys believes that Daemon and Rhaenyra had Laenor killed. So this is kind of like a little bit of an elephant in the room. Obviously, he's not dead. We know that. But they're not on great terms.
It seems like they're sticking to the script as well. That I mean, this comes later in the episode, but Rhaenyra had a chance to tell her. It's like, well, he's not really dead, but but they're sticking to it, so they're not saying anything. I guess because the books are kind of the same way, right? I assume where like everyone thinks he's dead, but
yeah, I think this was a surprise to book readers that he wasn't dead. I think they left it as him being dead. So I think once you fake your death, you kind of have to stick with it. I don't know.
Yeah, because otherwise, that she's already in a whole pool of hot water with the whole those kids don't really look like him side of things, and now it's like, by the way, this marriage we didn't get the divorce finalized, and it all kicks off. But I do like the idea of being away for 6 years and then coming back and being like, by the way, I swear I didn't kill him. Right. I just want to have this talk right now. I didn't kill him. Okay, are we cool? Right. She's like, no, we're not cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting. These are the types of things that I feel like the time jump again does a disservice, because I want to know the reaction to Daemon and Rhaenyra getting married. I want to know how Viserys felt about it. I want to know how Rhaenys and Corlys felt about it. I want to know where Corlys's loyalties lie, because we know he had a good relationship with Daemon. Do they still? If he thinks that he murdered his son, like I would love to know more about that. Where I feel like we're just jumping ahead 5 years in one episode, 6 years in another, 10 years in another, that we kind of miss the meaty parts of it. But I guess it's inconsequential to the show. But I would personally like to know.
I had read sort of, browsing Reddit and all that like part of why she doesn't see her dad for 6 years, Rhaenyra, is because he does not like that they got married, that Daemon and Rhaenyra got married.
Oh, really? Now that would be interesting context to have.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't this be great to see?
Which is weird because, I mean, I'm assuming that his first wife was related to him. And like they're all
she was
like
his cousin, I believe.
Right, so like they're all married.
Half Tully, half Targaryen, I think.
Oh, right. We looked at the tree, but I mean they're all fucking their cousins, and like everyone's cool with it. All the kids are fucking the kids. We're putting all the kids together, and everyone's cool with that. But like, why is it weird when when Rhaenyra does it with
literally his parents are siblings, aren't they? Like
maybe, yeah.
Viserys and Daemon's parents, I think, are literally siblings. It's something like that, where it's like, if you just go up one family tree, it's like there it is.
I feel like all the Targaryens. It's like, hello, uncle, brother, uncle,
yeah,
cousin, son.
My sort of take is that I feel like the one reason that I think Viserys could be angry about this is because of how insistent that young Rhaenyra was. Like, no, this didn't happen. Nothing happened. And it's like, oh, you guys want to get married now, and you're just gonna do it? Like, they didn't have anyone's permission.
Just gonna do it.
Right. They didn't, they just said, here's the beach and we will lay upon it. You know, they didn't ask anyone else's like sort of permission to be in this relationship. And I think that maybe that's where it comes from.
I also think Daemon is pretty problematic. He murdered his first wife.
Sure.
He came and
allegedly murdered his first wife.
Sure. I mean, we saw it, so we know that he did.
Well, we didn't actually see it.
He paralyzed his first wife.
Sure. At the very least, paralyzed his first wife.
The horse did.
Okay. But you know, he's had issues with Viserys and Daemon have had issues. They've had a fraught relationship this whole time. So
sure.
He came back. He accepted Daemon back into the kingdom, and then he took advantage of his niece, allegedly, which we know actually happened. Had, caused all this drama with Otto Hightower, got Otto Hightower essentially fired, even though he's back now, which is just so frustrating. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're not in the best place with each other either. Although we did see Viserys invite Daemon back into the kingdom in the last episode at the funeral for Elena. So who knows? But yeah, that's interesting. I'd be interested to see if that is context from the books.
Yeah, I would like to know that for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess we do lose context with the time skips, but I really feels like they're just like rushing towards the dance. That's what really seems like the meat of it, so they want to get to. So totally. And if they're planning like 4 seasons, like they must have a lot of content. I don't know how much is in the book.
Yeah. I feel like that's the frustrating thing, that we're sitting here like essentially, Game of Thrones season 1 was like days, right. Like a month. Like it was really sort of going very slowly, but I think because George R. R. Martin knew exactly what you're describing, Matt, of like there's lots of important things that happen within the short period of time, and instead we're going like 6 years, and also again, I feel like we don't analyze events after they happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Laena's death after it happens. We don't analyze like Harwin Strong's death after it happens, because it just time jumps ahead, and so we don't see Rhaenyra react to it. Like we're losing the reactions of our main characters to huge defining moments of their lives.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that gets me is that we don't see how Otto gets back at hand. Like, how does Alicent convince Viserys to reinstate Otto as the hand? Like, that's what I would like to see. Just little things like that we can assume what's going to happen, but like the nuance helps, I think, sometimes. That's my only complaint about the show, because I think the story is great, the acting is great, the storytelling is great, but like there are just these big gaps that I feel like if we just had like one extra episode or even just like one scene that could explain to us how these things happened, I think it would add something. But
what
anyway,
about like an overdub? Would you like a black
like
screen and just like like in the years past, something like that? Would you like that?
We should go full Star Wars.
Yeah,
scroll.
I would not hate it.
Somehow the hand is returned. Otter is returned.
Right. That's what
exactly
how it feels. That's exactly how it feels. So we get to King's Landing. Daemon, Rhaenyra, and their kids make their way. All of the kids. They have 2 new kids. They have Lena's children with Daemon. They have Rhaenyra's kids with Laenor or Harwin Strong, whatever you choose to subscribe to. And they're not met with anybody. One guy comes out, I forget, Lord someone comes out, something like that, I don't know, comes out and meets them, and then we do get a scene later on in the small council where Otto's like, did you greet them as I told you? And I'm like, what a dick, this guy. Like, did you greet them
with what meets their station or something?
Yeah, meets their station. Like, fuck you, Otto, you asshole.
He has a little grin too, like a little shading grin.
He does, yeah. He's very petty. And the Star of the Seven has replaced all the Targaryen symbolism throughout the castle. It's just an unrecognizable place to Rhaenyra, Daemon, kind of to us. Like, it feels very dark and dreary, whereas before there was a little more hustle and bustle. If you watch after the episode, the director did mention that like a lot of the tapestries are down, which I didn't notice while watching, and it's just like, there's less people mulling around, but it definitely is a lot quieter and like weird and sad.
Yeah, got a lot more religious and a lot uglier. So. Do those 2 things have but like I feel like I didn't quite catch, obviously the big giant necklace she's wearing, you catch it, she's wearing it. But I didn't realize that the 7-pointed star, I didn't feel like things had changed so much. And maybe it's because we're always just seeing like the Red Keep and King's Landing and sort of like
Mhm.
either like wide outdoor shots or like sort of interior shots that I feel like it's always so dark. I can't see that the walls have changed, you know. I can't
Right.
tell.
Right.
And the biggest change was that basically no one was there. But when I'd first watched, I just assumed that like when they're going to the castle, it was like a private area, so I didn't really get it. But then, you know, upon second watch and after they spoke about it, like, okay, like they're trying to change in the 7-pointed star. And I find it interesting that as a viewer, our only interpretation of like the 7-pointed star and like religious is like with like these psychos from Game of Thrones who like were carved shit into their right. So like it's immediately negative, right? So it's like it's I'm assuming that that's what they want us to feel.
I think that's like the main religion. I mean, I don't know, but I think that's like the main. It's kind of like their Christianity, but then the High Sparrow and the Zealots were just like extremists.
I know they were definitely extremists, right? But like for me as a viewer, if I'm like the only thing I have context to is just this like, you know, the 7-pointed star is this religion that's like extremism almost. Like, you know, when I see Alicent with a necklace, I'm like, oh shit, you know.
Yeah, Shades of Cersei for sure.
Yeah, I think this is a very fun characteristic to give to Alicent. I don't know how you guys feel, like to make her more religious, sort of more like in a weird way conservative, or like just more uptight, because she already is. She's already super uptight, but now it's even more like based in like a moral superiority style of Alicent, which I really like.
This episode actually made me feel really bad for her. It just made me, even before the scene we'll get into with Rhaenyra, but like when I see her with the 7-pointed star and like obviously we'll start talking about it, but like she's still a bit nasty to Rhaenyra, but you can tell that she's basically been alone here, or like with Otto, and you know she has to hold the weight of all this responsibility, and she like turns to religion. Her sons are terrible, you know, like so I feel for her, honestly. Like she's a very complex character. There's a lot going on.
I felt like in this episode she was much more grounded than in the past. Like in the past, I think, definitely she's high strung. We saw her slice Rhaenyra. We saw her really losing her temper. We saw everything with Larys Strong. Like things got out of control for her very quickly. And now we're seeing her 6 years later. She's got the 7-pointed star on. It seems like she's maybe using religion as a way to ground her a little bit in this shitty situation that she's in. Her husband is decaying, and you know, this is probably going to be the only man that she's ever with in her life. She doesn't love him. She cares for him, I think. It seems like
I think she loves him.
Cares for him, but I don't. Yeah. But it's not like the love. This is not the love of her life. You know what I mean? She married him as a duty for her father and for her family, but this wasn't the man she wanted to marry. Her kids are.
She's probably not going to remarry, right? Like she.
I would assume not.
Can women remarry in this universe? I don't know.
I mean, Rhaenyra did, but I don't know that. Anybody else can, because Rhaenyra has been known to buck tradition.
Yeah, is it also? I think it's also maybe a queen thing. Like, you know, does the queen get remarried? Who knows? Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume that she does not. Who knows? But
who knows?
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. I do feel a little. I feel sorry for her. Like it just does feel like a very lonely station. And she's doing her best. She is taking care of Viserys in his time of need. You know, her kids. Can't stress enough how horrible her kids are. I mean, we could talk about it.
So terrible.
Right after the scene of the small council, the Kingsguard, Eric, she's corrected, says, you know, something's going on. And Aegon's like, you need to go right away. It's urgent. So she goes up, and we realize that Aegon has sexually assaulted. We can even use the word rape. It seems like raped Helena's maiden, Diana.
With a Y.
Big turn. Yes, Diana with a Y. Big turn from old school Game of Thrones that we didn't have to witness the rape. That's a change. So good on you, House of the Dragon.
And what a good performance from the actress who's playing Diana.
Oh, yes. Incredible.
Really,
so good.
I appreciated this from the new Game of Thrones showrunners. But I also appreciated that Alicent is like, I was trying to figure out if Alicent gave a shit or not this whole time.
And you can't read anything on her face. It's like, she does such a good job.
She's like, oh, I hope you're doing, like, I feel really bad for you, but you know, you don't want other people to think that you're like one of those. So like, great performance from Olivia. Like, I really enjoyed this whole scene. Very tense, but very sad. And the moon tea, which I think isn't really mentioned, I think, appropriately in the show, but like the moon tea is why Lisa Aaron can't really have kids. Like moon tea is not just a casual plan B. Moon tea might F you up. And so to distribute it, it's why she has that little weenie of a kid, you know, Lisa Aaron, she has the little bird. Is because this isn't like super safe. And I feel like that is the one thing that could have been hinted at with the Kristen, you know, post Kristen Cole coitus scene. But post Kristen Cole coitus. But what a scene this was. And also they really just keep being like, hey, do you want to play Aegon? Do you want to show your butt on TV? Got it. You're in.
Yeah.
Like, every time.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if that's in the posting for the must be.
It's got to be comfortable with backside nudity.
Yeah.
For sure. You really couldn't read. By the end of the scene, I felt like I knew what she was doing, but also it's like she played it so well. It's like like, oh, it's coming from a place of caring where I'm trying to like, you know, I believe you. But is it like a manipulation tactic to be like, she probably does believe her, but at the same time, she probably doesn't care. Does she care about Diana? Does she care about this getting out? You know, is she playing both angles? You know, it's like, for me, I feel like she does care, but her sense of duty to her family is over that care for Diana, right? So I don't know. She just does a really good job of like portraying both sides of that, you know, human element for her. I thought it was really cool. I mean, not cool. You know what I mean? It's a good scene.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes that she is comforting but stern and somewhat threatening in her tone. Like, it's like, you don't want to let this get out. This might, you know, this will besmirch the prince and our family and you, and you'll be looked at, you know, it's like she had to balance all these things. And like, God, her kids suck, man. This guy sucks.
So terrible.
He doesn't even give a shit. Poor Diana is traumatized. Naomi, to your point, I think they did allude to the tea in the episode with the post-Christian Cole coitus, where the maester is like, well, if it's brewed correctly, it'll like, they kind of like half mentioned it, but they really didn't give as much context as they probably should have.
PCCC.
Yeah.
PCCC. Yeah.
I feel like you can even have a little bit of Diana in there, right? Diana sort of being hesitant to drink it, like, oh, it's perfectly safe, you know, one of those things. Just to really emphasize how it's all about the queen doing recovery for her terrible son, at the expense of a lot of people. Also, I feel like I like we get I think her name's Tyla, the woman who will later go report the secrets back, is also in this scene. And you're just it's never safe to be around. It feels like the mole. You never know who the mole is, you know? Like everyone's sort of creeping on you and getting your secrets and running around and telling them.
Totally agree. Allison also pays her off. Gives her a sack of coins, sends her on her way. But she wakes up Aegon, who's bare ass in his bed, seemingly not giving a shit that he just raped someone. And he's just like, oh, it's just harmless fun. And she smacks him in the face and basically just is like, you're no son of mine. She's just clearly disgusted by this boy now man who is a sexual predator and who's supposed to be, this is the guy that she has to like fight for to try and get Rhaenyra off the throne, and she's going to put this monster on the throne. It's like, obviously that's something she's probably wrestling with, right? And I think we get a sense of that a little later in the episode. Any words on Aegon? What about this new actor for Aegon? How do you feel?
I like
feel
him.
His face shape is totally different than the first Aegon.
Yeah, they can't. I mean, it's hard to have continuity between so many actors. They have to unless they like age them up in a tube or something. But I like him. I feel like he's really familiar to me. I can't really place him. I feel like I've seen him on something else. But it's funny because they're making out Aegon to be such a shithead, right? Like, but he's also really funny, right? Like jerking out of a window. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think young Aegon was funny. I don't find this Aegon very
I
funny.
found him funny at a few times. Well, yeah, he's a twat. That was funny. That was younger Aegon. Well, medium Aegon. Now older Aegon.
Yeah, medium, large,
yeah,
venti,
right.
Trenta, yeah.
And he's shorter than his brother now.
Yep.
Great detail.
Right, but I just found him funny. I mean, he's a shit. You know, at the dinner, he's a shit. He's just like, just not a good person. But he's like, I don't know, I found the interactions he had through the episode, besides the first one, kind of funny, humorous. I'll jump ahead a little bit. I found it even surprising when he slammed his cousin's, or I guess his nephew's head into the table. I was like, it was like a surprising turn. He didn't seem like a violent person. He seems like he doesn't care. Like he doesn't want the weight of being king. He doesn't care about it. He just wants to, live in his privilege basically and just like not have to deal with it. He obviously is not meant for this position or suited for it at all.
Totally.
Yeah. So it seems like this actor, Tom Glencarney, was in Dunkirk, but it doesn't seem like he was one of the soldiers in Dunkirk. He was also in the movie Tolkien, which is, I guess, about J.R.R. But I don't know. I feel like they keep doing this thing where they say like, oh, well, he's like a drunk, but then he like is a rapist. And I'm like, I feel that we should not make this guy so goofy. Or I don't know. It's one of those things where like, if he feels very goofy and then it's like, oh, by the way, he raped someone. You're like,
right. Yeah.
Whoa.
Right.
And if they put a little bit more of that like Damon violence in him, maybe we would sort of see it a little more reflected. Just one of those things where you're like, okay, if you want to develop this character more, I think he should actually be a little bit more violent. Just in general in life, he can be a shithead prince because that's who he is, right? He's like and I'm really fascinated by all of these characters because their dad doesn't love them. Their dad doesn't care about any of them. He doesn't know who the hell they are. They just all look alike and he probably mixes them all up all the time. And so to grow up without your father really caring about you and your mother clearly caring about you way too much, like
probably for the wrong reasons.
Exactly. It's like a very fucked up family.
Totally. And it's funny that Viserys really doesn't care much. I mean, we see him very soon call Rhaenyra his only child. Right. When the whole issue was that he didn't have a male heir, and that is what killed his one true love, Aemma. And now he has these male heirs, and it's not giving him what he wants. Like he is just continuously mourning this woman who passed, who was his true love, and now he has these shitty kids who suck, and there's a rift between his family. It's kind of sad. I mean, it's very sad. But we'll talk about Viserys I have a lot to say about Viserys.
Number one fan.
I am Viserys' number one fan, the OG number one fan. Helena comes in and is like, where's Diana? She's supposed to dress down the baby. So I guess, Aegon is now married to Helena, his sister. They have kids.
Yeah,
more kids. Okay. Kids on top of kids on top of kids, literally and figuratively. And Alicent just hugs her and it's like, she doesn't say anything. Obviously, Helena doesn't know what happened. But in the next scene, we see Daemon and Rhaenyra meeting with the king, and this is the first time they've seen him in 6 years, and he's in bed with bandages on his face. This is the first time we see him in what is 6 years, and he's just wasted away. His skin is like gray. He's decaying. He has a bandage over half of his face. He's frail. He's skinny. This is just like really this is when I first started feeling like the sense of dread in me in this episode. I don't know about you guys, but it's rough. He's clearly hopped up on milk of the poppy.
I thought we were going to lose Viserys like 4 episodes ago, so I'm surprised that he's still kicking. And he looks terrible. He truly looks bad. I'm so surprised that he's still alive. We're seeing him, but I mean, what an episode for him to go out.
Yeah,
he's just like so decrepit. Where every other scene he was in this episode, I was like, he's gonna die. Like every other scene, I was like, this is it. Here he goes. Bucket's getting kicked. And he didn't until the very end. And I was like, wow, you really held on. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot more symbolism to talk about in a little bit about the way that he's decaying. But I think what's really interesting is that there is a lot of talk where you could sit there and say, oh, Rhaenyra's probably like exaggerating that, the High Towers are like really being like super controlling of him. But at the same thing, they are keeping him like high AF the whole time.
Yeah.
So they are kind of controlling him and doing whatever they want because the king is indisposed rather than acting in the best interest of the king. And I like absolutely. That the show actually kind of makes that much more explicit. It's like, no. These people are like doing whatever they want to do because the king is knocked out cold.
Yeah, totally. He's wasting away in this bed, and Daemon, kind of leans in and fills him in on what's going on. But he's he's taking it in, but he's not taking it in. He's just like, what, Daemon? Like, I don't know. He doesn't really seem to know what's going on, but Daemon is like, you know, you need to reaffirm your position that Lucerys is going to be the heir of Driftmark. This is a big deal here. He has no clue what's happening, but Rhaenyra takes this moment to introduce them to their new children, the two pure blood Targaryen children that they have. One is named Aegon, another Aegon, and the other is named Viserys. And then he just seems so touched by that. And he just says, name Viserys, a name fit for a king. And then it almost feels like the emotion that overcomes him in this scene just causes whatever he's going, like it's just too much for him. And he just becomes in pain and he needs milk of the poppy. And he's like, oh, my tea. Daemon smells it after he gives him his tea. I got the sense that they're trying to see, like, does Daemon think that he's being poisoned? Do we ever know if he's being poisoned? I mean, we don't ever really know what's going on with Viserys. It's never confirmed. It seems like the wounds that he gets from the throne are really just infecting and they're just not healing. I don't know that we ever get more confirmation of what was ailing him.
I have no idea what's going on with him. Yeah. I don't know if it's caused by this throne or what, because it's spread to his eye, right, and his arm, everything, right?
Well, he's just I mean, everything is falling out.
Right. I don't think he's getting poisoned. Away. I think that Daemon was just curious as to like what was in the cup, and his suspicions were confirmed that it was milk of the poppy. You know, which is like, you know, basically puts you. I mean, if you have too much, you die, but if you have a little, you know, morphine, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. So there was that scene a couple episodes ago where one maester was pitching a solution to another maester, and the maester was like, no. That maester is now in charge because he's in the scene with Rhaenys in the basement.
Yeah.
And so he was the one who was pitching a different medicine. So maybe he has been trying to help Viserys and it just isn't working. Viserys is, I think, definitely poisoned from the throne and is poisoned from hurting himself. And that's, you know, there's talks in other moments in the series and the lore of like, the throne sometimes rejects kings, quote unquote, because it hurts them. And that some kings have even like killed themselves on the throne. It's like wild. Maybe you should. I think that's a story, right? Somebody fell on like a sword, which is like, this sounds like a work hazard, guys. Like where
I thought
definitely not safe.
No. I thought that's how Viserys was going to die this episode, by falling on the sword while he was walking up to the throne. I was like, oh fuck, he's going to fall and impale himself. But thankfully, that didn't happen. So
that would have been horrible.
That would have been horrible. Yeah.
Kind of funny though.
Oh my god.
Not for Viserys' biggest fan, who is me.
Right.
I like how this is the decrepit, because you hate Yoda. This is the decrepit old little man who didn't do anything that you really like.
Oh wow!
I do prefer this decrepit old man who does nothing to Yoda, who does literally. I mean, he's hiding. Viserys rose to the occasion this episode. When did Yoda?
There. Yeah, it's true.
He trained Luke. That's not. Is that not rising to the occasion? He fought Palpatine. Is that not rising to the occasion? He went to war. All right,
the wrong
podcast. This is just
wrong podcast. So in our next scene, Alicent goes and meets with Rhaenyra and Daemon, and they have a very tense conversation. And it's regarding keeping Viserys drugged so they can basically go around and rule the Seven Kingdoms.
The world.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, right? And Alicent is like, he's in pain constantly. Like, you're basically not here. You don't know what's going on. Like, these are pretty grave accusations. And then she's like, also, I'm going to be overseeing the petition with my dad. So, like, don't worry, I'm not going to take these comments into consideration. Which is a pretty good scene, I think, for Alicent.
A little nasty.
Well, I mean, they were making some pretty heavy accusations.
That's true. I mean, from her perspective, it's like she's been there alone, trying to help him, and I feel like she does love and care for him. Maybe not love him as like a lover, but
she's his caretaker. I mean, she is his caretaker.
She loves him and doesn't want to see him in pain, but also it benefits her her and her dad, or really mostly her dad. But she's been like indoctrinated. Honestly, it's almost like I don't blame her, but it's like. Does dual work, it helps him out, he's not in pain, and then they get to do whatever the hell they want,
Right.
Yeah, I also feel like in some ways, like what we were seeing earlier was Alicent felt extremely alone, and all she had was the two weirdos who nobody else wants to hang out with on her side, right? She has Kristen Cole, who is at this point needs
Just
to go to
extreme incel.
therapy.
Yeah.
Needs therapy. And you have Laris, who is like, so I just kill people for you, and she's like, okay, let's
not people, my family.
Yeah, let's circle back.
My dad and my brother.
Let's talk about this later. We'll connect about this later, which we haven't. It's over 6 years. We haven't connected.
Yeah, he's
about
missing. I'm assuming he's in Harrenhal. He's the Lord of Harrenhal now, so he's probably just there. Who knows what he's getting up to? But I would be curious to see when we're going to see him again, because obviously he's not going anywhere.
I was like, where is this?
Yeah,
idiot.
Where is this club?
He's going to get his.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Certainly hope so.
But I think that this is to say that Alicent has been surrounded by so few people who support her, and I think to have her dad there to support her now is just doubling down. You know, it's that thing when you're mad at somebody and you believe you're right. Tell me I'm right. Tell me, am I the asshole, Dad? Tell me I'm right. And Dad's like,
there's no Reddit. Totally they can't post.
Yeah.
All of Viserys and Alicent's children would be so deep on Reddit. If they were born in the internet time, that is like 1,000%. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah, Aegon would be like a men's right.
He'd be a 4chan.
Yeah.
He's definitely a 4chan guy.
Totally.
The other kids are like a school shooter.
Yeah. Yikes. So Jace and Luke, they go down and explore the weapons after the scene, and everybody's staring and whispering. And Luke notices Jace doesn't really care. Luke is like, everybody's staring at us, and he basically says something about Harwin Strong, and we're confirming he believes that Laenor is not their dad. And Jace is like, it doesn't matter what any of them think. And then as this conversation's happening, we just hear like this battle, and we see incel Kristen Cole and incel Aemond having their own little incel battle with each other. And Aemond is an adult now, essentially, with crazy long hair, a very sharp chin, an eye patch, and he is he's
insane.
Really grown. Yeah, I mean, like, he's really grown in his battle skill, let's say. I guess getting Vhagar really gave him the boost of confidence that he needed.
Yeah, I mean, he looks out of control. Like, he looks out of control. Like, the sharpness of this dude's face, it's like chiseled from stone. He scares me. How does this man go around his normal life and not scare children? And so he's, I don't know. I don't know. He's got the perfect pucker face too. It's crazy, but he's obviously very talented fighter.
Very good casting.
Great casting, especially considering I thought when they initially introduced him, right when they were giving him the pig, that it was a girl, like a little girl. So I couldn't tell. And then he spoke. I was like, all right, well, he's a little boy, right? But
we were inundated with like a bunch of little kids all at once.
Right. There's just so many little kids, right? But you can tell. I mean, I feel like that was very purposeful casting. He's like unsure of himself, like very quiet and looks down. Because obviously the kids are making fun of him. The pig and stuff, and doesn't have his own dragon. And then he gets Vhagar in that episode. Now look at him. He's huge. He's bigger than his brother, right? He's kicking the shit out of Christian Cole. Yeah. He's got an eye patch. He's a pirate maniac. So. Yeah, I mean, good for him, I guess.
Yeah, as people have said on Reddit, he literally looks like an anime character come to life.
Yeah, that's very accurate.
He really does. Like, if you told me that this is like, they made Cowboy Bebop, right? If you're like, this is actually like a character from Cowboy Bebop, I would believe you 1,000%.
Yeah, very accurate.
Sure. Really?
Yeah, and he basically like addresses his nephews, who are also, I guess, his cousins. I don't really know. Are they? No, I guess just nephews. I don't know. No, I don't know. But
it's hard to follow.
Yeah,
it's hard to follow.
And he is like, "Oh, want a battle, whatever," and that gets interrupted by Vaemond coming in with his bannermen from Driftmark to petition for taking over the succession once Corlys is confirmed no longer with us, which has not been confirmed. We don't know.
Right.
So he meets with Otto and Alicent, and he's just making deals. And even Alicent is like, I don't feel right doing this. Like, he's not dead. He could recover. And he's like, yeah, but in the event that he doesn't, like, he's really like pushing for this.
They're really assuming that he's going to die.
Yeah. And Alicent is the only one. It does feel like she's being relatively fair. She's like, nothing's happened yet. But with Otto in her ear and Vaemond just being like, well, a war is coming. We've been lucky to have this time of peace thanks to Jaharis and Viserys, but war is gonna come. And do you want a little kid on the throne of our strongest fleet? And he basically is like, yeah, Driftmark will support you with their full strength. So he's basically aligning himself with the Greens here, which we
I mean, that's basically what they're looking. They're looking to put someone on the seat that will control this fleet, that will back their cause, as opposed to, because they're going to make a play for it, right? They're just building up their allies. Yeah. That's all they're doing.
Although it's funny because I'm like, do they not have ships for King's Landing? Like, they don't got boats?
They talked about it, I think. They actually mentioned this in an earlier episode that, like, they do have ships, but, like, nothing in comparison to Driftmark. Well, they have, like, it's 80% or something, but they do have a lot of ships in King's Landing.
Yeah. I also agree that I think Alicent's being fair. And like you said earlier, Matt, I did feel a lot for Alicent in this episode. And one of the reasons was I thought that she was being very pragmatic in this moment of like, hey, I think we are really trying to call our shot here, and I don't think we should do that. And later, as we'll get to the family dinner, I think she was very pragmatic in the family dinner. And obviously, this is a show about, besties who fell apart and are trying to come together again. And that's what she's doing. And I really admired that of her and her performance this episode. I thought it was really a person who was struggling. Yeah. And it made me feel for her. I hate her fucking family, but I like her, Yeah,
I feel for Alicent. Like, it became very easy once we moved from the younger Alicent to the current Alicent to hate her, right? It's like, it seems like she was just like a mad queen. She was like totally had the wrong vibe. She took like Otto's words to heart and was just like super harsh and just like very high strung. But like, you really do have to, the whole time we've known her from her youth to now, she's been struggling with what the right thing to do is, and all these different people in her ear. And it's just, I do feel for her. I mean, I'm not rooting for her, but I feel for her. Which is interesting. I feel like the show obviously is like having us lean toward the Targaryens or the Blacks and not the Greens, which is interesting because I know the book is really just written from a history's point of view, but obviously the main characters here are Rhaenyra and Daemon, and they want you to root for Rhaenyra and Daemon.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, I keep in a lot of the discussions about the show from like the showrunners, I think there's a lot of talk about, well, it's like, yeah, well, no one's like truly good or like truly bad. Yeah. Like everyone has their flaws and stuff. And I guess I thought that watching the show that there would be that type of mentality where it's like, oh, well, this person kind of sucks, but this person also kind of sucks. And that is true. That very well may be true, but I'm not rooting for, I know it's rooting for Alicent. Like, who's rooting for Alicent and Otto? I mean,
well, there are people. I think a lot of book readers. I mean, if you see discussions, there are a lot of people who are pledging their loyalty to the Greens. I try not to read too much about it because I don't know what happens and I don't want to get spoiled. But there are definitely Green supporters for sure.
Why though? I mean, whatever.
I guess we'll find.
Let's get one on the show. Well, callers, call us up if you're a Green supporter.
If anybody's in the chat, let us know if you're a Green supporter. As this conversation is happening, Rhaenyra is doing her own. She's doing her own, she's making some alliances. She's playing her social game out by the Godswood tree, and she's approaching Rhaenys, along with her granddaughter, Rhaenys' granddaughter, Rhaenyra's stepdaughter, Rhaena. So we have Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, and Rhaena all having a conversation together. How great. Everybody has basically the same name. And she's like, oh, could you, just leave me here with your grandmother? And she's like, oh, you're doing a lot to like, soften me by bringing my granddaughter here. But pretty much she's just like, listen, this is a trap. And this is going to be, this is all set by the High Towers to be able to, name me as, or to question my inheritance to the throne, my succession to the throne. And she makes an offer that her children will marry Daemon and Laena's children, and then one of her granddaughters will be Queen of the Seven Kingdoms one day, and the other will be Queen of Driftmark. So it'll keep the lineage in power. It'll be kind of like similar to what the agreement was with Laenor and her, and Daemon and her. I got Daemon and Laena, just with their children. And, Rhaenys is like, this is a generous offer or a desperate one. And Rhaenyra says, like, what does it matter? And she says, you're right in this, at least it doesn't matter. But then she does say, tomorrow the High Tower strike their first blow and force you to your knees, and I'll just be left standing here alone. And it seems like this conversation didn't go well in the moment. I agree with your take, Naomi, that Rhaenys is amazing. She's great in this scene. She's great in every scene in this episode. In the whole series, she's great.
The queen that never was.
Yeah.
The queen that never was.
But she is a queen, so I feel like we got to change that name. No, I think that this scene was very good because I also walked away with your roommate Katie going, well, she's fucked. Rhaenyra didn't get what she wanted. There you go. But it kind of reminds me of Survivor a little bit. I tweeted a long time ago that Game of Thrones is just Survivor for nerds who who like swords. And it's true because this is a movie where you're like, well, why don't you should vote with me because we should vote out that person. And you're like,
yep.
Sounds like you're kind of desperate for somebody to work with. And they're like, I am. And you're like, okay, you know what? Fine. Let's do it. Let's do it. And I fully support it. I think it's a great move because remember, like at one point Rhaenyra was pitching like Helena marry Jace. Let's do it. Like, let's get these guys linked up and stop freaking out so much. But they didn't like that. And I think that this is a fun compromise in a different way that it's so funny considering how much Rhaenyra fought getting married, right? And fought like being given all these suitors. And she's just like, Jace, you're gonna marry this cousin, like you're gonna marry this cousin. And she's like, Joffrey, like I'm gonna betroth you, and you're like in kindergarten.
It's funny how difficult she was, and like to her forefather Viserys, and he's like, oh, whatever you want, Rhaenyra, and then all her children, she's like, you're marrying this. I don't like. No one even questions it. They don't even. Who knows?
Well, it kind of you get a cousin. You get a cousin. You know that it just shows how much she's grown into the rightful ruler, where the High Towers are trying to push Aegon, who's literally raping people, and here you have Rhaenyra, who's being political and trying to make these arrangements, as her father told her earlier on, like, yeah, of course you're gonna have to marry for allyship, and like it seems like she took a lot of that to heart, and she grew into the position that she's been named, where as like nobody's kind of like recognizing that. They're just saying like, oh, Rhaenyra bucks tradition, and they broke the law by naming a woman heir, but like she's really doing what she's supposed to be doing.
Sure. I just find it funny that she had so much liberty to, deny getting married. And that's why I could see why Allison had such, resentment towards her, especially because I feel like she probably felt like she left her too. And she left King's Landing and, she has to marry her dad, although she was a little weird about it by not telling her that she was like visiting her in her mother's dresses. I mean, you don't mention you're wearing your mother's dresses.
I mean, the other part of this is like, this is exactly kind of what Rhaenyra does to not exactly, but like to Baela and Rhaena, right? Is that like I would love to see how Baela and Rhaena feel about like my mother just died. I now have a new mother, and I feel very mixed about it.
Sure.
And I wish again that we would see just more of this like repeated trauma. I think generational trauma gets thrown out a lot, but I think it is true in this instance of like, what do your parents do that affects you and sort of fucks you up for life?
Totally.
And we see it with the other kids, but I feel like we have not really seen it with Rhaenyra's children as much, or the Valerians, which is a shame.
It is a shame. It does feel though that the Valerians and Rhaenyra's kids with Laenor Harwin really do get along with each other. They really do seem to. I mean, they're cousins, but it seems like they really have each other's backs, whereas like they clearly don't have that connection with the other Targaryen children.
Right. I think that was apparent in the funeral episode as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like they're not too upset about this. Like, could be worse. So after this, Rhaenyra visits Viserys in his room at night, and he's mistaking her for Alicent. And this is a really sad scene. She's very emotional, and she realizes this is probably like her last ditch effort. Like things are going really badly for her, and she's basically begging her dad, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's like mumbling, and she says like, you've given me a lot to bear. Like, do you believe this? Do you believe in the Song of Ice and Fire? Do you believe what you told me about Aegon? And he kind of like is just muttering. He's just like, a Song of Ice and Fire. Like, I don't know. And she's just sitting there like kind of like silently crying. And she says, if you wish me to bear this, then you need to defend me and my children. And he just starts like muttering something under his breath. We had the closed captions on when we watched it both times, and neither time was there was a translation. So I don't think he was really saying anything here. And she's just sitting on the foot of his bed, kind of like quietly sobbing, which is just really, she's probably crying because her dad is decrepit and just not mentally there, but she's also crying because everything is slipping away from her. These people are, she has nobody. She's completely alone. Her and Damon and their kids are just completely alone.
It's all going wrong.
Yeah, everything's going wrong for her here.
Mm-hmm.
This was a sad scene.
Yep, it was definitely upsetting. I really wanted to know what he was saying, but I guess he's not really saying anything. So
yeah. The next morning, Viserys is having his wounds tended to. He's seemingly not on Milk of the Poppy, and he tells Otto that he wishes to have supper. Fuck Otto, by the way. I just want to say again, fuck Otto, where he's like, oh, it's morning, Your Grace. And he's like, I'm talking about later, you idiot. Asshole.
I know that.
Yeah, like, I know. Hello, I'm talking about tonight. But he says his whole family's here at the Red Keep, and he wants them to dine together, and he just tells them to arrange the dinner. And he's sitting up, and he doesn't have a shirt on, and you can see just, like, he's basically a skeleton.
Yeah.
This is just like very sad. Like clearly
decrepit. Oh my gosh.
Decrepit. And I'm glad they showed us this because I feel like this just made the next scene so much more powerful. So we're in the throne room. Fucking Otto again, sitting on the throne, holding court about Driftmark. Like, get off the throne. You don't need to sit on it. Just stand in front of it or something. Like, that's not yours to sit on. Like, this guy's just so presumptuous. What a dick.
I will say this scene reminded me of something in Game of Thrones where the Lannister dad, what's his name?
Tywin.
Yeah, Tywin. I believe that he was sitting on the throne.
I believe that is true.
Giving some, holding court or whatever. So like he did the same shit, So that it reminded me of that. I was like, oh, look at this. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think, Matt, it's a good point of like there is a lot of symbolism in like who is sort of near the throne or standing on like much later when there's sort of a shot when all the shit hits the fan is like there's a shot of Rhaenyra and Alicent, and you can see Alicent is essentially in front of the throne, and Rhaenyra sort of looking up at her, and there's a lot of framing around like who is on the throne, and that is always, I think, a key detail. Is it's powerful. You're not supposed to sit there. Yeah. Daemon is not supposed to sit on the throne and all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like a big deal, I think, that Daemon sat on the throne in that first episode.
Oh, that's why the guy was like, by gods.
Yeah. When he Otto holds court. He calls Vaemond up to the room. He's basically saying, like, my blood is unimpeachable. I am the rightful heir, whatever. And Rhaenyra steps in here, interrupts him, and she says, so is my son Lucerys. Like, he's the trueborn son of, which is like rough, dude. Like, like I'm rooting for her, but like that's not Laenor's kid. Like, that's a little rough. Like, I get where Vaemond is coming. No, of course. Like, what else is she gonna do? But like, I get where Vaemond is coming from here a little bit, because like they are not related to him in any way whatsoever. They just have his last name. So like, I get it, but like, I also like, fuck this guy. Yeah, I don't know. But he basically says, what do you know of Valyrian blood, my princess? I could cut my veins and you still wouldn't recognize it, which I thought was he's a really good actor. This guy's an ass, but he's a really good actor.
Cares about his family tree. He wants his lineage to continue. He doesn't want it to die with kids who are not of Valyrian blood.
Do you think that's like a big project in school in Game of Thrones time right now? Is your family tree? You know how it was like a big project when you were kids?
Probably.
And just the fucking like.
Hopefully, kids are not watching Game of Thrones.
Jace and Luke have to make the biggest family tree. They're just like,
oh
Mom,
my god, yeah.
Like, and then they have that awkward one like, Mom, should I put Harwin Strong? She's like, no, don't say that. Don't ever put him on there.
Yeah.
It always reminds me of Ned, like looking through the book, being like, oh, black hair, golden hair. And
the seed is strong. The seed is strong. So he finishes his petition. Rhaenyra approaches the throne to speak for Lucerys, and as she starts, the door opens. Viserys gets announced, and Otto is shook. We're shook. Everybody's shook. Everybody is shook at what's going on here. We see him fully dressed, wearing the crown, wearing a gold mask on, which was kind of badass. I'm not, if you're gonna be disfigured, like at least have a cool gold mask like that to hide your disfigurement.
The crab feeder is gagged. Viserys stole his look.
Yes.
I'm shocked.
Yes, crab feeder was wearing the Wish.com version of this this mask.
The crab feeder wishes.
Wishes.
The slow rise from Otto in this scene is the best.
Amazing.
Just like, Oh, so funny.
Yes, this is a great scene. He makes his way to the throne. He walks himself. He has a cane. That's the only thing helping him get there. The Kingsguard goes to help him up the stairs. He has a very slow. The score here, by the way, is just amazing.
Great.
This is like
amazing
so emotional.
Score.
Like, yeah, I immediately like got emotional watching this. There were so many times I felt emotional as Viserys' #1 fan. Got very emotional watching all of this.
The music in the show is so good that it makes me infuriated that they didn't change the theme song.
Yes. Oh my god.
It's so good. Everything is so well scored that why wouldn't you just make a new theme song? They already have a theme song. It plays in every episode, by the way. It's that, the song, but they just make that the theme. Why do you have to anyway?
You know the tune, hit it. No, Matt, I couldn't agree with you more. Not talked about enough.
Frustrating.
Like, it feels like it's a nostalgia thing at this point where they're like, yeah, the fans love this cello. Let's go. I can't believe. And also, one of my favorite YouTubers, Alt Shift X, has like a really great video that explains the intro because the intro is extremely symbolic.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know because it goes by so fast and it's so small on the screen that all you see is like red spurting everywhere and you can't make heads or tails of it. I really wish that this sequence was different. It doesn't get me.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's like we were saying, Matt, it's like the PTSD. Like this theme song hasn't comforted me in a long time.
Yeah, don't remind us of what we left behind.
Right.
We're loving this. Don't give us shades of that mess that we left. No, I totally agree. At least do like a variation of it or something. It just feels lazy.
They already have a really good theme song they play every episode, basically.
Yeah.
Whatever. Can't really sing it because it's hard to. Mm-hmm. That's hard.
Viserys is walking up the court or the throne room very slowly. He turns, he makes eye contact with Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra, you could feel like the weight of this for Rhaenyra, of how they make eye contact, and he holds eye contact with her, and he says to Otto, I will sit the throne today, but the Kingsguard attempt to help him up, and he says, I'm fine. He wants to go up himself. He wants to walk up himself, but the crown, he's completely hunched over, and the crown falls from his head, and you see a hand pick up the crown, and as Viserys is going to pick it up, and he says, I said I'm fine, and he turns over and he looks, I could like almost cry just talking about this. He turns up and he sees Daemon, and he lets Daemon help him up the stairs and Daemon puts the crown on his head, and it's just a very nice moment that was ad-libbed by Matt Smith. This was not written in the script.
So what do you mean
the crown fell? So I have a note here from the directors and the writers, they said when we were shooting that, I think the rehearsal, again, the first day, the crown fell off Patty Considine's head, and Matt picked it up, and we just kept going. We didn't stop filming, and it just worked too well to make the episode even more impactful, and everybody recognized how powerful it was, and they said, there was a discovery there of this moment, and they were like, we felt this, and this felt like a turning point in our relationship. And apparently Daemon was also supposed to have a speech at dinner that they cut for time because they felt like this specific moment overshadowed anything else that would have happened at that dinner. So this was not in the script at all. So great job.
Interesting.
Yeah. Great choice. I mean, like, I could like it. I feel emotions right now just talking about it because these brothers had such a fraught relationship. And like, finally, Daemon never really had great faith in his brother as the king, and now he's helping him up. He's seating him on the throne. Viserys is finally rising to the occasion.
Yeah, the crown falling and him picking it up and putting it on him was really nice. But just the turn where he thought it was the guard, and I was like, it's Daemon, and it was Daemon. It was like the best. I thought it was such a good scene, like a culmination of or at least like such a repair for their relationship.
Yeah,
which felt really nice. This is just like this episode is a bookend, but also like an opening of a whole new all new shit.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. I know that Damon's a psychopath in a lot of ways and
totally.
a murderer and kind of crazy and stabby.
Yeah, but he's grown. He's grown.
Anyways, don't fast forward 10 more minutes. But I do think, my hot take is that I do think he would have been a good hand at the king.
I think
because
so too.
he is somebody who will speak to his brother honestly. He's very self-interested. Don't get me wrong. He's not like he's better than Otto in terms of how much I want something to happen for me. But he does love his brother and he does want his brother to be successful. And I think that he would have had good intentions with guiding his brother and giving him information. I also feel like here's to sort of sidetrack to like the general vibe of the room. Why are all these people here while this family?
Yeah, like who are all of these people here? Yeah, who are all of these people?
Who are the visitors? Who are the watchers? Is it like a tour group that comes in? Hey guys, check out they're hosting court in the Red Keep today. Let's go look. And then it's just like everyone yelling at each other. Why are there so many people? This is how you get a rumor out that Rhaenyra's kids are not her kids. Is you let everybody in their room while they're arguing about it. Like, what is going on?
That's a good point. Who are those people?
Yeah, it's very interesting. The scene where Daemon came a few episodes ago, where he came back from the Stepstones and he had that wooden crown on his head and his really bad haircut. There were a bunch of people in that room too, and I don't know who those people were either. But there were a lot. That room was way more full there, and I think I said the same thing. Like, who are all these people? But yeah, this was beautiful. It felt like finally Viserys cared so much about repairing these relationships with his family. In the last episode before this, he tried to bring Daemon back to King's Landing. He said Pentos is my home, but here he is. It just feels, I don't know, it just feels like a nice, I think you said it perfectly, a nice bookend for their relationship. And I'm sure Viserys appreciated that in his last few moments.
Few days, after celebrating the death of his son. It's been a while.
Right.
But exactly. I guess I think Daemon would have been, he's definitely grown as a character. Maybe he would have been a good hand. And like, I really feels like he's obviously very upset, and at least in the beginning of the show, that his brother kept pushing him away, and he lets people like Otto Hightower closer. You know, do you think he would have been less of like a scumbag if he had him his hand, and maybe he wouldn't?
I think so. I mean, I don't know Daemon's full background or anything like that. Obviously, I haven't read the books, but it feels like he was so reckless because he didn't have anything. Like, he didn't have a station. He didn't have anything he was in charge of. He didn't have a place to, like, he wanted to probably prove himself that he was worthy. And he even said in the beginning, you know, like, he would have been a good hand. He would have been honest and like protected him protected Viserys from himself. Whereas Otto was just completely self-serving douchebag.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there's something to be said that, like, I don't think Daemon, when we first meet Daemon, is a good hand of the king. But I think, like, post Sir Strong's death, not a bad option.
Yeah, I mean,
Daemon in fatherhood is a changed man.
I don't know how he got talked into Otto again. Like, pick someone else, dude.
Yeah, I would like to know.
Whatever.
So Viserys sits on the throne and he says, I must admit my confusion. I do not understand why petitions are being heard over a settled succession. The only one present who might offer keener insight into Lord Corlys' wishes is Princess Rhaenys. And like, just the respect that he has for Rhaenys, I love this so much from him. Like, Viserys is like our progressive king. Like, I have to stand. I'm sorry, I have to stand. Even in his dying days, he's fully here, mentally here, and it's just like, I said what I said. Why are we what is this? Like, what? This has already been settled. This is a settled matter. What the fuck are we doing here? And like, it took everything in him to do this. He continues to respect his cousin so much, and she comes through.
I think in that moment, that recognition, and that's what it is portrayed as in the scene. I don't know if this is what they were going for, but to me, it felt like that recognition in that moment made her immediately decide, like, I'm going with Rhaenyra 100%. Right? I feel like before that she was like, whatever, but like, you could see like a little smile on her face once he called her name out, you know. And probably some of the strongest in acting, but like his character, like Viserys is the strongest he's ever been in this moment, even though he's like also kind of weak, because he can just like, I mean, like, you know that Otto's doing this, you know that your wife is doing this, just get him out of there, but whatever. So in his weakness, this is one of the strongest.
It does feel like this is the most firm that he's been, and the most hard that he's been. Like, he's taking a hard stance for the first time. Yeah. And I don't know if it was in a podcast or if I read it somewhere, but people were saying like, this is one of the first times where he sat on the throne and it like seemed like he was comfortable and it didn't cut him. Like, he finally came into being king in his like last few hours, which is just like very sad.
Yeah, he's finally influential in some way. And I also think that him even showing up to this moment influences Renice to confirm that she is on that side. Because also what Renice is doing is remember doing her husband's wishes, is following her husband's desires, because Renice wanted to break order and have Bela take the throne, take over Driftmark. And now Bela can take over Driftmark. And so she's getting what she wanted while also respecting her husband's wishes. And I think, they are one of my favorite relationships. Everyone is so horny for Daemon and Rhaenyra. Get out of here.
I appreciate these Corlys.
Look at this long-lasting marriage where they can have conflict and still support each other. That's what you guys want. Stop being horny for Matt Smith. Jesus, he has no eyebrows. But this is like really doesn't. Especially in this show, they're so blonde, they're gone. And
you're right, he doesn't have eyebrows.
You gotta get the strong eyebrow gene. Matt's face is so funny. How
have I never noticed this?
I think that Renice really cements and I guess the public's there, so she cements her support. And I think that again, now Vaemon's response, I think in some ways can be attributed to his family and what he wants. But I think in many other ways, a lot of what the show is about men not being able to accept women's independence and strength and fortitude. Like Kristen Cole can't accept when young little Rhaenyra is like, no, I have to do this. I can't just run away with you.
Yeah.
And he's like, that makes you a slut then. Like, okay, yeah. Jesus. And I think this is another example of like a woman being assertive, using her power, and men being like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah. But I think this is what I agree bullshit. With you guys in that like this is the moment where like Rhaenys made her decision, because someone was finally giving her the opportunity to speak for herself and ask her what she's sitting on the throne in Driftmark right now. Her husband is the ruler of Driftmark. What does he want? What do you want? Like, who cares what this rando brother wants? Like, who is he? So, I think Viserys is really the only person that's, aside from her husband, that's really respected her in this way. Love to see it. Love Viserys the best. Love her too. And she says, it was ever my husband's will that Driftmark pass through Laenor, his trueborn son, Lucerys. And she says it. And, his wishes never changed, nor did mine. And then she confirms the proposal. And then Viserys says, well, it's settled again. Like, we don't need to bring this up again. It's, again, this is settled. Again. Yeah. And Vaemon loses his shit. Loses his shit. He says, this is no true Valerion. There's certainly no nephew of mine.
And,
yeah. And, Viserys is like, Lucerys is my trueborn grandson, and you are no more than the second son of Driftmark, which I'm like,
burn.
Get him, Viserys. Get him, Viserys. Get him. You're missing an eye and half your face and all of your body weight, but like you still got it. You still got it.
He's still sharp.
Yeah. Great. And he goes on to talk about like, my house has faced tribulations and blah, 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 whatever. And the doom or whatever it's called. And
doom
he's
this.
Like, and I will not see my bloodline ended on account of this. And then Daemon's like, fucking say it. Say it. Like, say what you say.
It's that TikTok meme of be fucking for real. Let's be fucking for real here then. Go ahead.
Yeah. He calls his bluff and he goes for it and he says, her children are bastards. And it reminds me of like that. I never saw 300, but like it reminds me of like This Is Sparta, or what is that from that movie? I don't even know. But he like very heartily says like, her children are bastards. And then he says, and she is a whore. And Viserys stands up with all of his might, takes out his dagger, ready to defend his daughter's honor and his grandchildren's honor, and says, I will have your tongue for that. And Daemon handles it and chops his head, sliced right diagonal down the side. Tongue still intact, but that's basically all that's intact. And just says, like, he can keep his tongue.
Pretty sweet.
I mean,
I was into that.
Yeah.
Respectfully, what is Viserys going to do in this situation?
Still, he got up.
I was like,
he got up.
You are not stabbing anyone.
Listen, not too much on Viserys. Not too much. My guy. Listen, it's the thought. Yoda would never.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Also something to remember with Daemon in this moment and the sword that he uses, Dark Sister, is like, this is Valyrian steel. This is not the cheap shit. This is why he's able to like slice through a guy's head. Oh my time, like in one swoop, is because this sword is super powerful and like really quite the Valyrian steel, all that jazz. And I think that I was forgetting that, and in my brain I was like, wow, that was crazy. Just like sliced it, and I was like, oh right, clean. That's a mega sword, like
very clean wound.
It's also a really big boy. Yeah, he was supporting it with like 2 hands, like down like that. It looked like a really big sword. So yeah, that's I'm sure it's very Valyrian steel, pretty cool. How do I get a Valyrian pen?
I don't.
You're just ripping up your paper constantly while you're trying.
Yeah, damn it.
Yeah, you're like, have to hold it with 2 hands, right? With 2 hands. It's so heavy. Viserys is overwhelmed by the pain here, and Alicent is like, oh, guards, like, oh, get him milk of the poppy. And he says, no, he will not cloud his mind. He needs to make things right. No milk of the poppy. He does not want his mind to be clouded. And then we move to dinner. Another scene that really gets me here. Any final thoughts on the throne room?
Nope. I think we got it all. Oh, that was the door.
We also see Rhaenys, actually, another stellar scene. I didn't write any notes on it, but she's watching Vaemon's body get prepared to be sent back to Driftmark. And, the maester comes over and speaks to her and is like, it's bad luck to, look at the dead, whatever. And she's like, the stranger has visited me more times than I can count. Like, this is basically, she's just so powerful here. And I just wonder what's going through her head. Like, I have to wonder, is she feeling like maybe she'd make the right decision? Or is she worried about what's to come? Is she worried about her husband? Like, there's probably so much running through her mind right now. And you can really just tell, I mean, she's so silent and so, she's so even keel, but like there's so much behind it. She's incredible.
Yeah.
She is. I also feel like, it's one of those things where she has just seen so much death around her. She's lost both of her kids.
Mm-hmm.
And
her husband's questionable.
Husband's current life status questionable. And she just really, I think, is feeling the desperation of being one of the last people left alive of her family. And at this point, it's like not surprising to see somebody die in this manner. It's just that life is a burden. And I think that she played it very, very well. And also very creepy. Bro, those sisters with their little freaking like pizza boxes behind their head. They are creepy.
For sure.
It's for
this
stability.
Is a gorgeous scene though. Right. All those candles is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like how can they see what they're doing? They need some more light there.
Yeah. Candles.
This is not a sterile environment with good lighting.
It's a little weird.
They did a good job of cleaning up Vaemond and getting him prepared. His face was very intact thanks to that sword.
Clean break.
Very clean. So we move on to dinner. Everyone is gathered in the dining room. It's tense. Alicent and Rhaenyra are both on either side of the empty seat that's left for Viserys. They're kind of like glancing over at each other, but they're not acknowledging each other. Everybody's quiet. Viserys is brought in on his chair, and he says how good it is to see you all tonight together. Alicent gives a little prayer. And Viserys gives a toast to his grandsons, to their betrothed, and to Luke as Lord of the Tides. And while he's toasting, Aegon is being just a shithead and is messing with Jace about like, oh, I guess you gotta finally feel what it's like to like be with a woman if you need to know how it's done. Like just being total fucking gross, dude. And you can tell Jace and everybody at the table is uncomfortable. All the kids are uncomfortable with this. Tensions are rising.
Yeah, your cousin has sex once and then he starts bragging about it all the time and you're like, bro, I don't care. Like, we go to different schools. You're not cool to me. Right. I feel like Alicent's prayer really made me laugh, where she's just like, what did she say? She said like, oh yeah. She's like, and R.I.P. to Vaemond. And Daemon just starts laughing. And I was like, motherfucker, show some respect in this one moment.
Yeah, Daemon cannot keep it together.
I find it so weird that they're like normal. I mean, it's normal for them, I guess, but like it's trying to normalize it for us, the viewer, kind of, where Aegon is like, and he speaks to his cousin. He's like, oh, if you want to know how it's done, like, let me know. And he's like, oh, let me go back to my sister wife. Fuck my sister. So it's like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, it's a lot.
I feel like the other people in Game of Thrones who aren't Targaryens like find this to be weird, right? Like
they do. Alicent even says like, I know you Targaryens have queer customs. Like everybody doesn't feel like this is not normal for other families.
Yeah, I mean, think about like the phrase. Remember, like, you know, the phrase and the fucking guy in the woods.
The wood, the up north.
Yeah. Those are always sort of revealed to be like despicable characters and sort of unliked characters.
And Cersei too with Jamie. That was weird too. And
I mean, that was a huge
tones talking about that
secret, like that. You know.
Well, that's because like they had the line of succession.
Well, also because of the incest.
Yeah, but the incest wasn't cool either. But sure. So I just find this
like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we agree that we agree. All right.
Yes, we agree that we agree.
Okay. Good.
So Viserys stands up and he says, you know, it both gladdens my heart and fills me with sorrow to see these faces around the table. The faces most dear to me in all the world, yet grown so distant from each other in years past. And then he takes off his gold mask. And again, like, oh my God, we see his eyeball. He doesn't have an eye. It's like his whole face is caved in. He's like basically a skeleton on one side of his face. Like he's truly decaying in front of everybody. And he says... I wrote his speech here. My own face is no longer a handsome one. Of course I did. I'm giving the respect to my true king. My own face is no longer a handsome one, if indeed it ever was. But tonight I wish you to see me as I am. Not just a king, but your father, your brother, your husband, and your grandsire, who may not, it seems, walk for much longer among you. Let us no longer hold ill feelings in our hearts. The crown cannot stand strong if the House of Dragon remains divided. Set aside your grievances, if not for the sake of the crown, then for the sake of this old man who loves you all so dearly. What a performance by Paddy Considine here.
If that's not Emmy, then what is, Naomi?
I agree. I think he deserves the Emmy. Don't get me wrong. I think he deserves the Emmy. I do not think that Matt Smith just sitting around brooding in the background deserves an Emmy.
No. But Paddy Considine, has been incredible.
You can't get an Emmy without any eyebrows. It's a requirement.
It is the law. And I also, so if you'll notice, like, the side of his face that's fucked up is the side that is facing the high towers and is facing his family. And that, I'm not a genius, that was pointed out online, but I think that it is very symbolic that like he's lost his eye, he really can't see what they're doing. Bro, his like this hole through his face. He went full Gus Fring, huh? And it's like it is the symbol of like this family has destroyed him in many ways. This new family that he created, where he was happy with his regular old me and Rhaenyra, you know, we could have just been like a cool little father-daughter, we do everything together vibe, and instead he has all these shithead kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he should have just not remarried.
Well, he didn't want to. He didn't.
I know, but he's the fucking king. Who's he answering to? No one. No one but God.
Well, so, yeah. It's true.
That's why I was like, they're like, oh, it's your responsibility. Just be like, fuck you. But he's not very strong-willed.
Right?
I know that's his character.
He does what other people have told him to do because he probably deep down doesn't feel like he is a good king or the rightful king, or there's probably always something in his mind that like, Rhaenys was the one that should have been sitting on this throne, but she wasn't because she's a woman, and here I am, kind of like this flop. But he right the moments before his death really feels like he's become his strongest willed. And I think he could have been a really great king. Yeah, I know. Well, he kind of fumbled the bag at the end, which
so close.
What can you do? I mean, listen, this was rough, but we'll get there. But yeah, I mean, I think finally it's kind of tragic. And if he had the right people around him, I think he probably really could have been this king the whole time, but he was just surrounded by these people who were just shitty, which is sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rhaenyra raises her cup to the queen, and she says, I love my father, but I must admit no one has stood more loyally to his side than his dear wife. And she toasts to her and gives her gratitude and her apology, which was a really sweet moment.
Yet again, Rhaenyra opening the door, by the way. This is the second time that she's opened the door to try to mend fences. The first time she's, Allison was like, fuck you, basically. And this is the second time, and it seems to have actually meant something.
Yeah. Well, it seems like Viserys's words held weight. And I think, seeing him as he is, seeing that he's so close to no longer being with them, they took this time really to mend the fences that he was just begging them to mend finally. And it felt like, things were being somewhat repaired. And it seems to finally work, like you said, on Alicent. And she says, you you move me deeply, princess. We're both mothers. We love our children, and we have more in common than we sometimes allow. I raise my cup to you in your house, and you will make a fine queen," which is a huge deal that she says you will make a fine queen. We get a flash to Otto. He's clearly not pleased, and he's like, "Oh shit." And it feels like they reverted back to when they were friends, when they were teenagers. And we even see them later on, Alicent doesn't want Rhaenyra to leave. They're holding hands like they did when they were kids. Rhaenyra says she's going to come back and on Dragonback, and
it was cute.
Unfortunately, things just go awry very quickly from there. But
I also think that this is a sign of this is again the generation, right? Is that Viserys didn't pay attention to his kids. Alicent didn't Alicent's children essentially get the brunt of it, where they're not loved. So she is poisoning their minds of Rhaenyra's you got to be careful. Rhaenyra's going to take over and you're going to be screwed.
Because Otto is in her head.
And hate these kids, hate your cousins. And then, or your nephews or whatever the fuck they are. And then with the other kids, it's the same thing of hey, I don't like these guys. And they create this division and this animosity between them. And then when the parents who were friends are like, actually, you know what? I miss you, bestie. Let's get back together. Let's be friends. The kids don't have that same love for each other. They have nothing but animosity for each other. And so there are no bonds to be repaired because the hate runs deep.
Yeah. And it's sowed from their families. This is generational hate now. That's maybe they can mend their fences, but these kids, that's not going to happen for them at all. But Aegon continues to be a little shit and harassing his soon-to-be wife. I think it's Bela, is the one that he is messing with. And he's like, "Oh, if you need any tips on how it's done, blah, blah." Yeah. And Jace stands up, kind of slams the table, and Aemon kind of meets him, also standing up to just be like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna try it? I'm a psycho. You don't want to fuck with me."
Look at my chin.
Yeah, and things feel tense for a minute, but then Jace, cooler heads prevail. Jace makes a toast to Aegon and Aemond, and he says, "We have fond memories of our shared youth, and as men, we hope that they may yet still be friends and great allies." But he's kind of giving him a slap on the shoulder, which is very funny to me. He's
a little punch in the shoulder. Right?
Yeah.
Aegon looks so defeated. Or here he goes, and Chio's as well. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah. Which just goes to show this family is the one that should be ruling. It's not this awful Targaryen line that came from Alicent. It's Rhaenyra she has the cooler head. She's the smart ruler. Her kids have been brought up to be great ruler. Jace would make a great king. So not Aegon. He is not the one.
It feels like both Succession and Arrested Development kind of all in one. Just the absolute batch of weirdo kids that are all fucked up by their parents and have no control over what they're going to do.
Totally.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like a really weird Arrested Development with actual stakes.
Yeah. Helena starts saying, "Beware the beast beneath the boards." I don't know what this is alluding to, but we know that she's one of the Targaryen dreamers.
Every time she says something in the next episode, something related to what she says happens.
So we'll see.
Very curious about what's
manifestation and positive thought.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
She's
what that
a dreamer.
Means. Yeah. But she does stand up and she says, "Congratulations, being married. It's not that bad. They mostly ignore you until, they're drunk or whatever." Someone's giggling. I think it's Damon. I don't know who's giggling during this. They don't really show it, but this is just messy. And then they celebrate. Jace gets up. He dances with Helena. They're all having a great time. Music is playing. They're smiling. Everybody seems to be having a nice time. They're all bonding. Even Otto's drinking up. It seems like things are finally coming together. And this is all Viserys wanted this whole time. I wrote 7 sad faces here because he's sitting there and he's just looks like, he's looking on. He just seems like he's in pain and they take him to bed. But this is with his last moments, it almost feels like he can let go now because it seems like finally his whole family's together. This is all he's wanted, is for his family to be together. That's all he's wanted.
Yeah, it seemed like he was crying, but out of happiness, and then it was too overwhelming, and he just needed to go. Just too much pain, kind of overwhelmed him. But definitely very sad.
Small gripe. They don't have wheelchairs.
Yeah, what's going on?
I know. They need to invent those.
They had all these guys lugging him around. They could have dropped him.
I know.
Where's his dragon? Get a mini dragon, for God's sake. You can't make a mini dragon? Get a baby dragon.
As he's being carried out, what's being carried in?
Yes.
But this insult of a pig. Placed right in front of Aemond.
Yeah, and then shit hits the fan. I don't know if it's Joffrey or I think it's Joffrey that's laughing at this and not.
Is
but
Joffrey
that wouldn't
there?
make sense because
I think it's Luke.
But he looks so young here.
Where is Joffrey?
Like he's much younger. I don't know where. I don't know
in the scene. I don't think I've ever even seen him.
Joffrey was in the scene where they're like practicing their Valyrian for like, everyone's like, where the fuck is,
right.
like on the floor. He's like literally just
sure.
This is also something that gets my goat.
But he's like 7 or something at this point. Like he's not a
6,
little kid.
No? 7?
This is you're totally right. Like this is what gets my goat is where it's like, oh, by the way, here are my other kids, and then like, where's Joffrey? Where are the kids that they just had? Where are the kids that because Aegon and Helena have had children at this point? Like,
right. Where are those kids?
When we start just like multiplying,
weird. Pretty weird,
and then they're not relevant to the story. It's kind of like I don't. Feels like that kind of thing where like a character has a child that we meet for like 10 seconds and the child dies and you're like, well, I didn't know who that was, so it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
Also, Rhaenyra has a lot of kids, huh? A lot of kids. She got like 6 kids.
For a woman who literally, like, I think at one point in the early part of the show was like, I don't want to have kids.
Yeah, 6, right? Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
That is a lot of kids.
3 with Daemon?
It looks like she's pregnant.
Or 2. Yeah, she's pregnant. So the third one's coming, right? Yeah, she is pregnant. She is pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So you got Aegon, Viserys, and then to be announced.
Yes.
TBD.
Yeah.
But yeah, they bring in the roast pig. So Lucerys, I guess, begins to laugh about the prank that they played on Aemon very long time ago.
Such luscious hair.
When they were previous actors. Yes, very. Well, it's very dark, strong hair.
Yeah, it's so nice and fluffy.
And he starts giggling, and Aemon is like, no. He sees it. They all see it, and then he stands up and he makes a toast, and he just says, "Final tribute to the health."
He actually slams. It's actually funny because he slams the table, and the second he does that, all the music stops. And Viserys asked for them to play music, so I thought it was a good.
Yeah.
So everyone just stops playing because they're like, "Oh."
Yeah, celebration's over. It was a celebration while Viserys was there. GB in the chat says King V should have taken his other son with him. Everyone with one eye go to bed. totally bedtime for everyone with one eye.
Yeah.
Totally
Psychopath,
agree.
you or me?
Yeah. He says, final tribute to the health of my nephews, each of them handsome, wise, strong. Let us drain our cups to these strong boys. And Jace is like, everything goes crazy. Jace punches him. Matt, I think you said earlier, Aegon slams one of their heads into the table. Alicent is like, what are you doing? Like, would you say this? Like, and he's like, what? I was just saying to my strong nephews. Like, total asshole move.
Shit.
Total asshole move.
Luke should have taken a fork and taken out the other eye. That's what he should have done.
Yeah. Seems like tensions did not simmer down from 6 years ago. Obviously, I mean, this kid did take his eye out, but like, he
said it was worth it.
He did say it was worth it. He did. But all the bullying did not seem to. It's like it all built up in him. Like Matt, I think you said he was like a school shooter earlier, which obviously we're not making jokes about school shoot. Like we're not making a mockery of school shooting. But it does feel like scary. That aggression has grown inside of him, and he's taken that out. He's built it into like fighting and battling, and just wants to like let that aggression out anywhere.
He's been encouraged to like essentially tap into his violent side.
Yes.
And he's been encouraged to like access violence, and as we know, like Kristen Cole is very specifically training those, more so Aemond, I think, because it doesn't seem like Aegon can be bothered to get over his hangover to train. But that the strong boys, the Rhaenyra's children, don't have that kind of training. It would be cool if maybe Daemon decided like, hey, maybe I'll teach him how to swing a sword.
So that's actually another thing I was wondering when they actually started this episode. I actually said that when they walked into, and maybe in my head or maybe out loud. I don't know. Katie doesn't. I say a lot of shit. She doesn't listen. I'm just joking. But I think I was thinking this. I was like, I wonder if in the time jump, right, if Daemon maybe have trained these kids because they obviously are missing it, but we don't know that, right? Maybe he did. I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it because of the way that they were looking at kind of like the weapons cache.
That kind of seemed like, dummies.
Yeah, it seemed like they were like, oh, look at these weapons. Yeah, it didn't seem like they were like, oh yeah, I would kick someone's ass with this.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say that I think that this scene was a symbol of how, in many ways, Aemond has access to his rage and his violence and his like violent side, whereas the other boys are growing up to be a little more level-headed, even-tempered, kinder, and at the same time, that means that they are weaker in some ways and that they cannot put up with their cousin. I also have a question. I want to know what you guys think, because I could not understand the vibe of some of the things I think either Aegon or Aemond was saying about Jace that felt like they were implying that like he doesn't like women, not like misogyny, but like that he might be gay. I don't remember, but it was something along the lines of like if he ever has sex with you or like whatever. And I was like, what is that?
That was Aegon saying to Jace that's like, you'll know what it feels like to lie with a woman. Right, you'll find out. So I think he was just calling him virgin.
Yeah,
right.
That's what that's the vibe I got.
Which is so funny and hypocritical that like that's something to make fun of a dude for in this world, but like Rhaenyra like couldn't.
Too. A guy who is either effing his sister or attacking women, like
that, of course. But Rhaenyra and like but Rhaenyra couldn't. Such a travesty that she like was deflowered before she was married. But like these fucking psychos can just bang whatever and be like, you're a virgin loser. Right. I'm going to fuck my sister. Anyway.
Well, it's kind of like, that's like the premise of the whole show, right? Is just like the patriarchy.
Yes, and for sure. It's not lost on me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it even, to your point though, like it shows up even in these like smaller, more nuanced ways. So it seems like things are about to explode. Daemon though steps in, and they have a little bit of a visual standoff here. They're staring each other down, and Aemon stands down.
He's got quite a walk too, if you've noticed.
He does have quite a walk. And, I think there's like these very interesting times where like Daemon is like, go to bed, or like steps in as like a fatherly figure. It seems like he's like chilled a little bit, even though he did just slice someone's head off. But like he does like step in ways where he'll be like, he did it in the last episode where, the kids were fighting. And I think it was also Aemon or Kristen Cole. He stepped in. So it's very interesting how like subdued Daemon is kind of, even though, again, he did slice someone's head in half.
They deserved it.
Yeah. Which like, not to go back to that, but like, it feels like these are all the people that like Viserys should be beheading these people, right? Like back in the day, like you make a slight on the royal family, like you should be beheading these people. You shouldn't be letting these people like walk all over you. And Daemon is like taking the stand to actually do that. So,
although I feel like the problem is like, and maybe why Viserys is actually like so impotent in his actions is that like, it's true. So he like, I feel like maybe that's part of the conflict for him is that like, I don't actually want to murder someone for saying something that like deep down I know is true, and like you almost just want the problem to go away, and so you can't decide what to do until it spirals out of control, and then you have to behead someone in the middle of the room when you're like dying at the age of 40 or whatever, how old he is. Like gets out of control.
That man was 29.
He's not as old as they make him.
He's a millennial, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. He's not as old as they make him seem.
Probably not. The Game of Thrones ages were so out of control that it's whatever.
Yeah, they played a lot with the ages of the characters in the book too. But anyway, so Alicent sends the kids to bed. Rhaenyra sends the kids to bed. She says to Alicent, kind of what we said before, I think it's best if we go back to Dragonstone, which to me, I'm like, your dad's literally about to die. Like, you could stay. Just stay. Like, yeah, the kids, maybe send the kids back, but like, you should stay. Let them go with Daemon, or let them, like, I guess they can't get taken back by someone else, but like, it just feels like not the move to just like leave right now.
Yeah.
It just does not feel like the right
bad timing. It's always bad timing.
Yeah. Especially as it feels like you're gaining some footing here, like don't just leave. But she says, it's best if, at least let me see the children home and I'll see my way back on Dragonback. And Alicent says, the king and I would both like that. Like she really doesn't want them to leave. It seems like she does want to rekindle that friendship, and maybe finally Alicent will have someone who she can confide in as a friend, but not really. I mean, we know that's not going to happen, right? So it's terrible timing all around. And these kids are just ruining everything.
Yeah, I feel like, what we get later in the episode where like the king says something while he's dying and it just destroys everything that they just built. I do still feel like that if that didn't happen, the kids would have effed it up somehow.
Oh, totally.
Like it would have all crumbled either way.
Yeah,
this was not lasting.
you could tell that there are this whole, I mean, there's a whole notion of fate in Game of Thrones, like the Dreamers, and you can tell that it's all this is fated to happen. Even their relationship, their like almost mended relationship is ended hours later by Viserys, and like speaking his dream, as I'm sure you'll get to, but it's just
we're about to get to it.
Sucks. I mean, but if it wasn't this way, then we wouldn't have a show to watch, right? It wouldn't be fun. So.
Yeah, I would tune in just to watch Viserys be king, but that's probably just me. I'm a very limited.
A great time.
Yeah. We do see I think her name is Missaria, Daemon's former maiden, and she's, I don't know where she's really come up since leaving Daemon and Dragonstone. And we see Naomi, as you pointed out, the queen's handmaiden, or whoever's handmaiden, someone who's tending to the royal family, going up to her, and Missaria says, it's been quite a night at the castle, it seems. And she says, yes, indeed, whatever. What do we think this is? Is this like getting back to Daemon? Who's getting these secrets? What's going on here? This is very like Littlefingery, Varysy, Little Birds. What do we think is this information's being used for?
So I didn't get this the first time I watched. I didn't realize that this was the same girl that was in the bedroom with Alicent. I just didn't get it, but the second time I got it. I don't know. At first I thought maybe she was going to like blackmail Daemon because I don't know. I don't know why she would. I don't know if she has like any ill will towards him. None of us know because they've jumped so many times. We have no idea what her mentality is, but it seems like she maybe has like procures secrets potentially and then maybe sells them or utilize them for her advantage. I mean, like her whole mentality earlier was that she wanted to be safe, right. And what's more safe than holding secrets from powerful people? So that's what it seems like she's doing. I don't know if she'll help Daemon based on their previous relationship with this information. I'm assuming yes. I'm assuming that somehow she'll tell him, and then this will be a big deal, or a deal in some way. But
I don't know. I just think the show's so good. I'm so sort of like over the moon that like we're actually getting Game of Thrones told in a way that is compelling and interesting, and the characters are not, isn't this what we loved about Game of Thrones? These characters are not black and white. They're very gray. They're very tough in some ways to root for, and in other ways you're rooting for them very desperately. Like, I don't know. I just love this show. And particularly, I am really nervous for next week. I don't know about you guys. We haven't gotten to like the big moment, but I'm really nervous for next week.
The penultimate episode.
Yeah.
Isn't that when shit always hits the fan?
Something always hits the fan.
I don't know if they'll continue that trend with this.
I'm sure
show,
they will.
You think?
I don't doubt that they will. I think, back to the Handmaiden, there was a scene in the episode where Larys and the Queen were having dinner together in her room. I don't know if it was the same Handmaiden, but they made it very clear that there was a Handmaiden there seeing them together. So I wonder if that's going to come back at all now that we know Missaria is kind of like getting this info and has insiders in the castle. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm curious why they introduced it in episode 8. I'm curious how it's going to package up the episode or the season at the end. Like, it just feels like something's going to go on here. So
especially because she's been around for so long. We could have lost her at any point in time, but she's just like lurking.
Obviously, she's going to have some kind of an impact, and I'm very curious to see what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So we get to Viserys. He's in bed. He's in pain. Alicent comes in. He doesn't realize it's her. He thinks it's Rhaenyra. He thinks they're picking up on the same conversation they had earlier, seemingly the night before. She's giving him milk of the poppy to put him to sleep, and he starts to finish the conversation about the Song of Ice and Fire. And he said, "You want to know if I believe it to be true? Aegon, his dream, the Song of Ice and Fire, it's true. What he saw in the north, the prince that was promised." And he says, "To unite the realm against the cold and the dark, it's you. You're the one. You must do this." And in between, she's like, "What are you who? What? Aegon? Aegon, our son?" Like, she has no clue what he's talking about. And then she just goes, "I understand, my king." And I'm like, "No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't understand anything. You don't understand anything. You do not understand anything." And we get a kind of like the pan out as she leaves the room of the dagger. This is just like, fuck. I wrote in my notes, fuck. LOL. That's what I wrote. Fuck. Like, damn, we ended on such a good note at dinner. Things seem to be going great. Obviously, we know we're leading up to the Dance of Dragons, so it's not going to go great. But like, damn, Viserys. Damn it. That milk of the poppy. You should have kept your mind clear, like you said.
Yeah. You know,
you did. You made things right. You did make things right. And then you undid all the work that you did.
At least that's what he feels before he goes. But that's what I was saying before. It's like, it feels like this is a fated thing. So like that needed to happen in order to drive this conflict, in order to get to the Prince of Prom, the whole prophecy, right? So it's like, it does suck because it was so close, but.
Yeah, I think maybe it just goes to show, don't talk to your dying father, or he might just reveal information to another family member thinking it's you. No, but like there is this tragedy to Viserys, which is like he's trying so hard to be a good king. He's trying very hard to keep his family together. And every time he fucks it up, every time he cannot get things to be a finite and finished, and instead like shit hits the fan at every point in time. So I feel for him.
I feel for him too. And it does feel like, Matt, to your point, at least he thinks he made it right, because she leaves the room and then he starts saying to himself like, no more. Like, he's letting go now. He feels like he made things right. He feels like his family's back together. He got a chance to celebrate with everybody in the room one last night. He probably never thought this moment would have come. He feels like he just told Rhaenyra, like, I'm cementing it. It's you. You are the one that's going to unite the realm. So he says no more. And then he just starts moaning, and we see a single tear fall from his eye. The screen goes black. He's putting his hand up. He's reaching, and he just says, my love, as it seems like he's passing on, and he's seeing Emma as he's dying, which is just so sad, which is another improv line. That was all Paddy Considine. That was not in the script. He improvised that, which is just incredible. Because you see him so many times playing with her ring, like he calls Rhaenyra his only child. It's like he sees Emma. He literally
accidentally calls Alicent Emma. Yeah.
Yes, he calls Alicent Emma. Like, he is mourning her for the rest of his life. He's mourning her, and he blames himself, of course, for forcing her to have all these children, because he had this dream that he had an heir named Aegon was going to sit on the throne. It's all very tragic. The story of Viserys is just very tragic. So I will mourn my king, King Viserys Targaryen, first of his name. King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. We stand. We stand. Protector of the realm.
Yeah. Fun little like parallels, right? We got Viserys in a gold mask this episode. And what Viserys do we remember that had a lot of gold on his face way long ago?
Yeah, that's a great point. Daenerys' brother, Viserys, who's
not
worthy of the name Viserys.
One of my favorite.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
Just like,
that was a great scene.
One of those moments where you're like, oh, that's what this show's gonna be? Okay. Let's do it.
Right. I want to read something that Paddy Considine put on his Instagram. George R.R. Martin has told him that his Viserys is better. I'm eulogizing my guy, Viserys. He said he got a text message from George R.R. Martin that says, your Viserys is better than my Viserys, which is very sweet. But he said, thank you for the kind words. I cannot reply to every comment, but I'd like to acknowledge that they haven't been lost upon me. It was an incredible adventure where I made lots of new friends that will be with me for the rest of my life. I'd like to thank the creators for allowing me the freedom to make Viserys my own. I've never loved a character so much. I want to give massive love and respect to, I think, Brooke Cyan, who, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but who plays Emma, who came in for only a few days but changed the course of my character with her brilliant performance and commitment to the work. The impact stayed with me until my final improvised words. She unlocked the missing piece of the puzzle for me and allowed my story to come full circle. From the moment she dies, so does Viserys. It was a love story. That's the secret I carried with me. As sick as he gets, he never himself demands any cure. He quietly accepts his suffering, never forgiving himself for putting his beloved wife through such torture in her final moments. Viserys was a gift. I'm so honored he found me. Now, no more. Paddy Considine, amazing. Viserys, amazing. I mean, it's true. We never see him in this series demanding a cure, finding out why somebody, more maesters. Even that one scene, Naomi, that you brought up before with the other maester who was like, let's try this other cure. The other maester's like, no, milk of the poppy and the leeches have like been working fine. Like, it's almost like he feels like he has to punish himself. Yeah. Which is kind of incredible that this is like all work that was done by Paddy Considine and that was not really written into the show. So like, bravo to you. We will miss you, Viserys. I will miss you, Viserys. My king.
A great character. Rest in peace. I really like that we got finally the confirmation that he sees Rhaenyra as his like only child.
Yeah.
By the way, that's like, I know you mentioned that, but like I think it's really important to see that and like kind of gives perspective to the other kids and stuff. But he did a great job. I really like that. He said it's a love story. That's really very nice. And it's obviously punishing himself for like saying he deserves what's happening to him. So, and him letting go at the end is like him thinking that he set things right. So at least he went out with a bang.
Yeah.
Like, what there's so much to like that has already been said, both by you guys and by Patty and George R. R. Martin himself endorsing it. Like, it's just really great. And I feel like, again, last week I watched the Game of Thrones episode 7, and Robert Baratheon literally dies off screen. And like, there's either, I feel like deaths in Game of Thrones a lot of the time are either shock value. I mean, certainly we got a lot of those this season. There's like shock value deaths, and then there's very meaningful deaths. And this is like one of the most quiet, subdued deaths that we've seen in Game of Thrones. And I thought it was really well done. And it reminds you that not every death needs to be like a ice zombie biting your face off,
Totally.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm you brought up something too that I kind of wanted to touch on is like, I'm glad they made his death so devastatingly sad. Like, this is very sad. There are so many times, Matt, I think you said it earlier, like we thought we were going to lose him like 5 episodes ago. The fact that he made the first time jump with us was a shock, because we saw him pass out at the end of the wedding of Laenor and Rhaenyra, thinking he was dead. Like, they very easily could have just been like, oh, King's dead, everything's going to shit now. But like, they really made it this tragic, devastating story. And I'm glad, because it gave a lot of weight, even though we knew he was going to die, like, obviously. But just to make it so emotional and make us like feel it, I think that was really great storytelling.
Yep.
Very sad stuff.
Yeah, I wonder, without him in, I mean, I know the show is going to pivot to more of like, I don't know if it's going to be like full out war or whatever, or drama. I mean, I don't think the strength of, I've heard this somewhere else, but I don't think the strength of Game of Thrones or these types of series has ever been like the battles. It's always been like the character development and stuff. And like, sure, a cool battle here and there is sweet. But I said when they first announced this show, I actually wasn't interested in the show at all, because I don't give a shit about dragons. I don't fucking care. I don't think they're that cool, to be honest. I think big lizards, magical dragon.
I'm with you. Everyone's gonna get mad, but I'm
same.
with
you.
I don't fucking care. They're not
either,
that cool, guys. They're not that cool. Well, anyway. So I didn't want to see a whole show about dragons and like fighting with dragons and using creatures as instruments of war. I'm like, oh, great. That's cool. I don't care about that. That makes me sad,
more
actually.
fire breathy, yelling, flying BS.
Right. Let me train this dog, and then train this dog, kill people, and this dog's going to die. It's like the same thing. So I don't want to see that. But thankfully, they haven't done that at all, basically. They're like, they're there, but they're not like, it's not really the forefront of the show, which I appreciate. I hope they don't pivot towards, more. I'm sure we'll see some of it, as the coming war happens, but I just hope it's not like the total focus, you know what I'm saying? So we'll see. Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic.
To me, I think the one interesting scenario that there is that we haven't really seen before, because we saw Ice Dragon versus Fire Dragon, but we've never seen a battle between dragons, right?
Right.
Sure, yeah.
I think it could be very boring. I'm kind of with you, Matt. Is like I'm very sort of tentatively looking forward to it. If that's something to happen, like I actually don't really know, but my prediction is, well, if you have people who are fighting and they both have dragons, you have to assume that at some point,
right,
they're gonna Harry Potter like blow fire at each other and just like
Dragon Ball Z, sure,
yeah. And so I would like to see that, but yeah, for the most part, like. What I also liked about they didn't House of the Dragon that I feel like they kind of ignored is like when that scene when he visits where the crab feeder is attacking and he just steps on the guy who's like, thank God,
yeah, that was pretty great.
Squish. Like these are not very gracious. Not gracious. I don't know. They're not subtle, right? They're just gonna crush everything in their path. Doesn't matter who it is. Right. And I feel like that was a little bit explored, but I would be interested to see that explored more. It's like they're weapons, but like. You don't pick and choose who gets burned. Like everybody gets burned.
I mean, we saw it, and when Daenerys was just burning down King's Landing, I mean, there was no
my queen.
No. I mean, anybody who got in the way was just roasted alive. I was not. The children too. Yeah. I was not very excited about the show either. because the Targaryens have never been my favorite. I was never really a Daenerys fan. I clearly didn't like her brother. The only other Targaryen we knew, aside from Jon, which was a theory at the time, was the Mad King. So it's like, we knew of also Daenerys' brother, but we didn't know him, you know.
Yeah.
Like the Maester dude in
Maester Aemond.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, well, we like him too. Yeah. He was
cool.
Yeah. But I was just kind of like, I don't really care about these Targaryens. Like, what's all the hype about the Targaryens? Who gives a shit? And now I'm like fully in. I'm like, oh, I love the Targaryen. Like, I'm all in. I mean, like Viserys specifically and Rhaenyra and Daemon, like I'm in. Maybe not so much, Aegon, the child Aegon.
Well, they're all Targaryens.
Well, I mean, there's 2 Aegons, so yeah, I mean, like it's a lot. But yeah, I think it's all very very interesting. So we'll see where we go from here.
I love their incest.
Yeah, no, it's great. Things are definitely going to take a turn. Things are going to get very dramatic very quickly, I think, which again is why I'm glad they gave us these final moments with Viserys to like let us feel emotion before shit hits the fan. So rest in peace, Viserys. You'll be missed.
Rest in peace.
He's really keeping it all together, as much, even though he had no idea that he was really the peacekeeper of the realm. Shit's about to hit the fan.
Yeah, a time of peace.
Obviously, you guys are you on the greens? Are you the blacks? Do we know? I mean, can we assume?
I'm rooting for the people who don't have crazy psychopathic children. Yeah. That's my hot take.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah, same here. I mean, they really made it very difficult to root for the High Towers. And I mean, there's no High Towers in Game of Thrones, so I mean, I assume they're not there. So something happens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is 200
as far
years
as
later,
we
right?
know.
I mean, who
as
knows?
far as
It's
who
200
knows?
years later. And the end of that line, as far as we know, because Alicent is the only child of Otto, his wife passed away.
Right.
She's a Targaryen now. She's married, so like she's not gonna have any the Hightower line is pretty much dead with them anyway.
I guess it's already
unless
done,
there's
right?
other, we met her uncle. I don't know if they have kids or whatever the situation is there.
True.
But like coming from Otto, it feels like that line is dead anyway. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah, so I'm definitely on the Targaryen side, I guess. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. George R. R. Martin has come out and said that it will take 4 seasons, 10 episodes each, to fully tell the story in its entirety in the way that it's meant to be told. So I'm sure HBO is going to be like, okay, great. Sign me up.
4 seasons sounds good.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
But I guess like we're going to get to a point where they are no longer going to time jump as much or change actors. I feel like if you're going to have 4 seasons, they're probably going to have like 3 of those seasons with the same actors. And then maybe at the end they'll do another time jump and then it'll be like older or whatever. But I assume this season will be the time jump season, and then if you're having 3 of them, then
it feels like this season is like the prequel season of like all
Yeah.
of the events leading up, and then the rest will be like the full story playing out. But again, like I've tried very hard to stay unspoiled, as I've said a few times on this podcast with Chanel and Javier. I did see a few things, unfortunately, this week that I think did spoil me on some things, but I still don't know fully. It's really hard out there in the Reddit streets to stay unspoiled. And on Twitter, I mean, it's like everybody is just... This is coming from someone who got spoiled about Jon Snow getting stabbed in like an Instagram comment like 4 seasons before it happened. So like I was like, oh, fuck this show. And then I just went all in on the wiki page and just read everything. So I'm trying not to do that with this. I'm trying to stay as unspoiled as possible, but we'll see what happens.
I know. I
Stick
read the books when I started watching Game of Thrones because I was like, what happens next? And then it went so far off the rails that I was like, that's not what happens next.
Right. Yeah, maybe I'll read the book in the off season and see.
I was thinking about that too. I think but then am I going to get spoiled for 4 seasons of TV? Oh my god, I don't know if I should read the book or not.
I know it's hard. It
is hard.
Any final thoughts? We're at the 2-hour mark, but this episode was, I think, worth spending the extra time on because it was just it was a beautiful episode, and it was, again, seemingly the final episode that we will know some sort of peace. So I'm glad we spent the time on it, and I'm glad we eulogized my guy Viserys. We'll do it again with Chanel and Javier back because I need Javier's thoughts as my fellow Viserys stan. But any final thoughts?
Just pay attention to your kids. Make sure that they have hobbies and activities and things to do so that they don't fall into the wrong crowd of people.
Like Kristen Cole.
4chan.
Yeah. If you're gonna call some people bastards, make sure your back is to the wall. So you can't get snuck up on.
Well, it'll come from Damon would have done it right in front of his face too. I think.
I'm saying they can defend himself a little bit, but
true.
That's my word of advice. So that's my final thought.
It's good advice. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here and stepping in with this. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if anybody listening listens to The High Ground for our Obi-Wan recaps, you will know. I mean, Naomi's on a lot of other coverage here on Silent Podcast as well, which I will let her talk about. But this is the crew that talked about The High Ground. Thank you guys for being here. Naomi, where can people find you on the internet if they would like to keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, well, if you enjoy me going off the rails while Katie keeps us all together, you should listen to The High Ground, which we just started covering Andor. And let me tell you, Katie and I, great episode of Andor. Lot to talk about.
Great episode.
You don't want to miss it. But tomorrow I am talking about episode 6 of The Mole with JD and Carrie. I'm psyched.
Also a great show.
Great show. We're on
new
a
episodes coming out tomorrow. I cannot wait.
I'm psyched. # Team Joy. And just chaos. I love chaos.
Yes.
And
oh man.
So we have some old Top Chef coverage and Project Runway coverage. There are new seasons of those shows coming out eventually. It'll be me and my quickfire queens, Gia and Nicole, back at it whenever that comes out. I have done some fun things like Nothing But Netflix and Renap recently. And I have a podcast called Mike White Was Rob. So go listen to that. That's, and follow me on Twitter at Naomi Calhoun. I don't know. If you know, you know.
If you
follow me.
Naomi's a good follow. She's doing a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Matt, where can people find you?
I don't know. I don't know. I have a Twitch, I guess, under Glances. I don't stream very much, so really not many places. But that's it.
It is always a treat though when you stream. Follow Matt on twitch.tv/glances. He's a good time. It's always a nice surprise. But there's a lot happening on his Twitch when he does decide to stream. It's always a good time.
There is a lot happening, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Matt, feel free to join us if you want to talk about Andor. You both are welcome to join us anytime, again, on this podcast if you would like to. There's 2 more episodes left of the season. You can find me on Twitter at RealSimKatie if you would like to follow me. You can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/RealSimKatie with an _ at the end. I also stream more frequently than Glances, but not that frequently. No, I'm trying to get better at it, playing some spooky games. Have a long stream coming up soon on the weekend of Halloween. It's all fun stuff going on over there. So putting more effort into that these days. Also, you can find me all over the place on Silent Podcast as well. We've done a few exit interviews for Big Brother 24. Isaiah very humorously, I don't know, referred to some of our new followers as the Taylor stimulus package. We got a lot of new followers from our Taylor exit interview. So welcome
funny.
if this is your first time listening to us. It's so true. And I said, Taylor's karma worked for us just in in a good way. So welcome in everybody new if this is your first time listening to some of our scripted coverage. But if you are also a reality TV fan and you're listening to our scripted coverage, check out our exit interviews with Taylor Hale and Monty, who came in second place on Big Brother 24. We may have some more interviews coming. We don't really know. We're keeping our ears to the ground, but Isaiah is working on a project where we're going to do some rewatches of some of the old seasons. So that'll be really exciting. More news to come there soon. It'll be very fun. You can also find me and Carrie covering all things Real Housewives related on the Cool Water Show. Real Housewives of Potomac is back. Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is back. We had a good reunion last night at Beverly Hills. So things are hitting their stride finally with Housewives. We've had a few dull weeks or months. So we're excited to be back talking about that stuff. I will also be joining Carrie on TJ Hates Quitters talking about the challenge. Reluctantly, I told her
what aren't
at the
you
end
doing?
of it's a great question. At the end of the season, I said that at the end of the Challenge USA, I was like, I'm giving up on the show forever. But I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it.
You should have.
But it's going to be a hate watch, and I reserve the right to quit at any time. So get me while you can. It'll be full of rage.
So
one of our loyal listeners.
You're going to quit TJ Hates Quitters?
TJ might hate me. I might be a quitter. He may hate me. It's totally possible.
TJ drove her to this.
He did. He kind of did. You can also find Naomi and I talking about Andor on the high ground. And you can, of course, continue to listen here. We'll be back every 2 weeks. And I will also be talking about The Mole with Carrie this weekend on Saturday. So listen to Naomi on Friday. Listen to me and Carrie on Saturday talk about The Mole. So yeah, what aren't I doing? I don't know. It's a great question. But
Katie's not talking about Survivor. That's the one thing.
I'm not talking about Survivor. I'm not. Maybe if she asks me to, I will. But I am not. Anyway, for those of you, again, who may be here as your first time, feel free to, we would love it if you would give us some support. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's a banner up here right now telling us where you can follow us. But we do stream a lot of our content live on Twitch and YouTube. So you can give us a follow at Silent Podcast on Twitch. You can search for us, Silent Podcast on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter to get pretty much real-time updates on what's going on and what coverage we have going live and what's being posted at silent_podcast on Twitter. You can also listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I use Pocket Casts, even though Matt hates that app with a passion. You can also listen to us, I don't know, pretty much anywhere. So feel free to like, subscribe, leave us a rating. 5 stars will help us get discovered in the algorithm on Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. So it's much appreciated. It's a free way to support us if you would like to do that and you like what you hear. No pressure though. If you think it's 4 stars or like 3 stars, you could just keep it to yourself for now until you hear something that's worth 5 stars and then give us a review then. It's totally fine. Thank you everybody though. Thank you for being here with us for this extended episode of Fire and Pod. And we'll be back next week with Chanel and Javier. And if either one of you would like to join us, you're always more than welcome. Thank you everybody.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.